Imagine this, you've just reached the peak of your professional esports career, achieving something only a few players ever have, winning the League of Legends World Championship, and beating the GOAT of the game to get there. So why aren't you happy? For Lee Crown Minho, this was his reality. For accomplishing something so great and difficult, he received disdain and ridicule from the fans, ignoring the years of hard work and resilience it took to achieve his dream. This is the story of how a young boy put in the effort and became a champion. This is the story of Crown. Lee Minho was born February 28, 1995 in the city of Daegu, South Korea. His journey into esports began, like many of his South Korean peers, through the incredibly popular game Starcraft. He initially began playing in 2009 with his school friends as well as a few older cousins. They would hang out at PC bangs where Minho was considered a weak player. However, it wasn't in Minho's nature to just give up and accept defeat. He wanted to beat his friends. Instead, he found himself tirelessly researching guides and strategies, practicing them until he became a better player. Minho eventually beat his friends and came to the realization he was quite good at the game, in particular playing as the Zerg faction in Brood War. With his newfound local success, he decided to delve deeper into the world of competitive Starcraft. A pro scene had existed for a decade in South Korea since Starcraft's launch in 1998. During his dive into the competitive side of the game, Minho idolized the pro player Lee Jae-dong, or as most people simply know him by, Jae-dong. In a 2021 interview on the Genji On Air podcast, Minho recalls how he wanted to play for Jae-dong's team, Hwasong Oz.
저는 뛰어보고 싶었던 팀 화승 오즈.
응?
아 이건 좀 너무 갔나?
응?
제가 존경하는 선배님이 화승 오즈 이재동 선배님이었어가지고 같이 해보고 싶었거든요.
Minho would excitedly wait for Jae-dong's matches, sitting in front of the TV until they started. It was during the 2009 OGN Star League finals where he witnessed his idol win the championship and lift his third major trophy, earning the prized golden mouse.
중압감이 공격적인 박명수를 수비적으로 만들었던 거고요. 자, 여러분 이재동 선수가 세 번째로 하지만 가장 빠른 시간 내에
Minho admired the way Jae-dong conducted himself, how he seemed to enjoy winning and the happiness it brought him. He wanted to be like Jae-dong, so he vowed to work hard to achieve the career of a pro gamer. The next coming year, Minho would practice during the day and stayed up for long hours throughout the night, working hard on his gameplay. In March 2011, his efforts seemingly paid off. At 17 years old, he was drafted as a trainee by STX Seoul.
As you can see on the wall here, STX World Best.
Seoul was a South Korean Starcraft team playing during the Brood War expansion. They had quite middling results and often fell behind the bigger teams like SKT T1, Hwasong Oz, and KT Rolster. However, this doesn't discredit Minho's achievement. Making it into a legitimate professional esports team was no small feat. Funnily enough, STX Seoul would briefly be the home to StarCraft 2 legend, Innovation, who some might know as T1 Gumayushi's older brother. At this point, Minho simply went by Minho, imitating his hero Lee Jae-dong, who also went by his own name. Throughout 2011 and 2012, Minho played several StarCraft Brood War events, but never quite found his footing at the top, with his highest placing being third in the Hot Hog Star League, finishing on a respectable 16-7 record. During his time at STX, Minho received guidance from coach Park Jae-suk. In a 2016 interview, he recalls, "I have a lot of thoughts, so I think about what I should do to do well and ask a lot of questions. Whenever that happens, my coach tells me that practice is the answer when I can't do well. It's better to focus on the practice at hand rather than wasting time with thoughts and being interrupted." The saying, "if you can't do it, practice," became embedded in Minho's psyche, something that would last throughout his esports career. He sadly left the team in late 2012, partly because the official competitive format had transitioned to Starcraft 2, and Minho preferred its predecessor. But in truth, the biggest reason he moved away from his dreams of being a Starcraft pro gamer was because he was told he wasn't good enough. Minho stated in an Instagram post from 2020 that, "I tried really hard to beat the starters from the bottom, but according to the players and experts' evaluations, I wasn't able to play like S grade, A plus grade, A, or even B grade players." This criticism would stick with Minho throughout his esports career. Although harsh, it would motivate him to work even harder. As far as our young Minho was concerned, his career in Starcraft was over, and his dream of being like Jaedong was done. Nonetheless, this failure may have been a blessing in disguise for the now 18-year-old Lee Min-ho. He diverted his attention and strong gaming affinity to a new challenge, League of Legends. League's popularity was still in its infancy in South Korea, with their servers only being established in December of 2011, allowing Korean players to practice without restriction. Many of Minho's Starcraft friends, including League of Legends pro player Duke, transitioned to the game and pushed him to join them. With a new game, he wanted a new player name and settled on Shadow before trying several other names like Flash and Modesty. He started in late 2012, placing gold at the end of the season before quickly improving to diamond and beyond in Season 3. Before the summer of 2014, he reached Challenger and his talent was recognized by the Brazilian esports organization Team 58ers. Minho and fellow Korean player Reset joined the team in June 2014. Team 58ers would eventually be bought by Kaboom Esports in September of that year. This was a great relief for Minho, as the living conditions within the Team 58ers house were reportedly not ideal. The players had to practice in internet cafes, and he didn't know the local language, nor did he have any money. Supposedly, by the end of his term there, Team 58ers owed Minho $6,000. So when Kaboom bought the team, they took the 2 Korean players in, apparently saving them from homelessness. Now playing under the name Kaboom Black, Minho would participate in 2 tournaments, BGL 2014 Season 1 and Razor Challenge Brazil Season 2. Minho and his teammates were ultimately unsuccessful, placing 3rd to 4th in both tournaments, losing in round 1 of playoffs to Cade Stars at BGL, and in the semi-finals to Pain Gaming in the Razor Challenge event. Despite the poor team results, Minho showed promise, particularly through his mechanical prowess playing champions like Jace, Zed, Orianna, and Twisted Fate. But due to their overall lack of success, Brazilian fans dubbed Minho and Reset as the shit Koreans. This disdain led to Minho feeling quite homesick, and he became depressed. For now, he would have to pause his dream of being a pro gamer and find another way. In a Reddit AMA from 2018, Minho was asked about his experience in Brazil. He stated he initially regretted it, but eventually enjoyed his time, saying how he learned a lot at the start, but quickly realized the esports scene in Brazil was far too new for him to truly reach his potential. Minho only played in Brazil for 4 brief and disappointing months, before heading back to South Korea in December 2014. Little did he know, going into the 2015 season, South Korean League Legends would go through a few drastic changes. The popular use of sister teams was banned by Casper, basically axing half of the teams in the LCK, which subsequently took out half the players too. On top of this, many Korean players left for other regions, especially for China's LPL, as they offered huge contracts. This period was known as the Great Korean Exodus. Notably, mid laners Dade, Pawn, and Rookie all went to China, resulting in a large hole in Korea's mid lane talent, and giving up-and-coming rookies the opportunity to break into the LCK. Minho had the chance to prove himself here, however it wouldn't be immediate. He needed to grind a little before he was given the chance. In late December 2014, Minho joined Korean semi-pro team Hyper. He also went under a new name, dropping Shadow for one he toyed with during his time in Brazil. He would be known as Mid Modesty. Hyper participated in a semi-pro tournament called Clan Battle, hosted by Nice Game TV. This took place in January 2015 and allowed the top 2 teams to qualify for the Challengers Korea Series, where he would have the further chance to qualify for the LCK. The improvement in Minho's gameplay here from his humble beginnings in Brazil is commendable. He absolutely dominated these games on picks like Syndra and LeBlanc, often putting up double-digit KDAs and huge CS leads. Most of these games are just highlight reels of Minho styling on the enemy, whether in lane or in teamfights. Hyper won clan battles off of a huge carry performance from Minho, and they qualified for the 2015 Challenger Korea Series. This was a two-part tournament taking place over 4 months, starting in January and ending in April. The top 4 teams with the highest points over the course of the 2 series will qualify for the LCK Summer Promotion Tournament. Even though Hyper just won convincingly in clan battles, the team would need to improve greatly if they wanted to compete against the Challenger competition. Many of the players participating in Challengers Korea would go on to be pro players on LCK teams. Players like Mickey, Snowflower, Kramer, Nuclear, and even 2018 Worlds winner, The Shy. Minho wouldn't be able to just lock in Syndra or LeBlanc and beat his opponents on mechanics alone. His team play would also need to improve, and he would need to develop a more diverse champion pool. Unfortunately, this doesn't quite work out for him. He tries a few different champions, notably Kassadin and Kog'Maw, but fails to find any success. Hyper are defeated early on in both series, and Minho's dreams of being a pro player are once again stinted. Maybe Minho just wasn't good enough to be a pro. His team play was still lacking despite having strong individual performances, and his champion pool was severely limited to a few picks he was comfortable on. He would really need to practice to even have a chance of getting noticed by an LCK team. And that's exactly what he did. If you can't do it, practice. That's what his Starcraft coach said all those years ago. Minho reportedly played 4,000 games of solo queue in 2015. That's over 10 games a day for an entire year, on top of team meetings, scrims, and other commitments. Minho clearly devoted himself to the game, and people knew it. SKT T1 ADC, Bang, even jokingly said, in reference to how hard Minho would work, that if he practiced like him, he would die. This added practice increased his champion pool and refined his playstyle. He wanted to become a better player no matter the costs. Minho's efforts were seemingly rewarded in May, where he was scouted by an LCK team going into the 2015 summer split. The team Minho would be joining was none other than the defending world champion, Samsung Galaxy. However, this was also the team that struggled the most post-Korean Exodus. Not only did they lose all 10 of their Worlds players, but they also lost an entire team slot. The Samsung org was forced to combine Samsung White and Blue into one entity going into Season 5. The organisation basically had to start from scratch. Before Minho joined in spring 2015, they fielded 3 rookies with an ADC who had played for a year and a veteran support. Cuvée, Eve, Bliss, Fury, and Wraith would make up the main spring roster, with Ace coming in as a secondary mid laner after Bliss showed a poor performance. They struggled in LCK Spring, placing dead last at 8th and winning only 2 series, both of which were against the 6th and 7th place teams. Samsung Galaxy would go on to face relegation. Thankfully, they were able to swiftly defeat their opponents in the Champions 2015 Summer Promotion Tournament, retaining their LCK slot and allowing Minho to finally join a professional League of Legends team. Choi Edgar Wubom, who went by Doggy when he first met Minho, was the Samsung coach that scouted him. When asked about Minho in a 2020 interview with Inven, he recalled, "I had heard of him from his Starcraft days, so I knew he was a hard worker. He told me about his hero Lee Jae-dong and said that this is the only thing he can do well. He moved my heart during the test. I was impressed, so I chose him." Edgar also came from a Starcraft background, having competed with little success, and knew exactly what type of competitor Minho was, someone who would put in the effort and strive to be the best, no matter the cost. This was it then. Minho was finally contracted to a pro team. He had practiced hard, playing thousands of solo queue games, competing in Brazil and showcasing his talents in the Challenger series. He was ready to compete against the best of the best. His dream of being a pro gamer was finally coming true. Minho would go through one final name change to signify this moment. He wanted to win it all. He wanted to sit on the throne and tell the world he was one of the greats. All Minho wanted was to be recognized for his efforts, to be like Jae-dong. The name was obvious. Now playing for Samsung Galaxy, he would go by Crown. Joining a last place team had its benefits and disadvantages. For one, Samsung Galaxy had nowhere to go but up. Crown, with his strong individual skill, could easily raise the team's ceiling. But on the other hand, the current roster was lackluster, and Crown wouldn't even necessarily be the starting mid laner. He had to compete with 2 other players. 2015 was no stranger to teams with multiple players in a single role. Just look at SKT with Faker and EasyHoon. But to have 3 was a little excessive, especially for a last place team. The Samsung Galaxy mid laners would be dubbed ABC by the Korean fans, and the fight for starting mid laner was heated. However, Ace would see 0 playtime in summer, and Bliss saw 1 game but was substituted in as a jungler rather than for the mid lane. Crown was quickly identified to be the strongest of the Samsung mids and would start every game. With a clear upgrade in the mid lane, Samsung's summer season would go slightly better than spring. Improving to 7th place out of now 10 teams, they finished with a score of 6 wins and 12 losses. They failed to make playoffs, but were safe from relegation. Crown clearly elevated this team from the get-go. He was 3rd in CS per minute out of all players in the LCK, even beating out Faker. His individual performance was a highlight, but he was still playing slightly over-aggressive. His champion pool reflected this, with champions like Cassiopeia, Fizz, Azir, Victor, and even Yasuo. The Yasuo pick in particular was somewhat unique to Crown, where he piloted it against SKT T1 in the second half of the season.
Faker just dies at the re-engage. Fury, Wolf gonna go down too. What a hilarious game.
Wow, I mean, Crown's
Mankey's underneath are exactly what they want for this Yasuo. He has no chance of losing these 1v1s. Baron trying to fight this. Hextrigger!
he's still going!
He's still going! The double! Bang, the only one left alive!
Yes!
Unfortunately, they still lost this game despite Crown's best efforts. Although they improved from spring, Samsung was still only able to claim victory over weaker teams, until the very last game where they bested CJ Entus, who placed 3rd in both splits. CJ Entus had made big waves in 2015, with previous mid lane superstar Ambition role swapping to the jungle. After losing the first game in the series, Crown locked in Victor for a dominant 8-0-6 performance. He finished off the season with another strong Yasuo game, beating CJ Entus 2-1. Samsung Galaxy's season was over. They didn't qualify for playoffs or worlds, but they were in a much better position than they were earlier in the year. Going into the 2016 season, they would have a strong centre play to build around in Crown. They just needed to find the right parts to fit around him. In November 2015, a few things happened. The first Casper Cup took place, a pre-season tournament for teams to test their new rosters and to qualify for IEMs. With 0 new signings so far, Samsung was swiftly taken out of the tournament. This was the last straw for this iteration of Samsung Galaxy, and the team was blown up, with Eve, Ace, Bliss, Fury, and Luna all leaving. Cuvée, Crown, and Wraith were all that remained. With his team half empty, Edgar would need to sign some big players to rescue this once great esports org from failing again. He began with acquiring a new jungler. A player who'd proven himself to be adaptive and determined, he came 4th in the 2015 Spring MVP vote, and his team finished 3rd in both splits. On the 30th of November, Edgar signed ex-CG Entus jungler and Korean legend, Ambition. Next, they needed a new AD carry and decided to pick up 2. They signed Stitch, who had been playing in the LMS region, and ex-Dignitas ADC and Kiwi Kid protege called JJ. The general consensus around 2016 Samsung's new roster was that it was at most a side grade. They lost Fury, who was rated decently, and replaced him with 2 ADCs who weren't even in the upper rankings of weaker regions. And Ambition had begun slumping at the end of 2015, with CJ Entus occasionally subbing him out. Overall, fans and analysts had Samsung Galaxy ranked near the bottom of the league, with the official LoL Esports ranking putting them 9th place, and as a C-tier team. On top of Samsung's perceived weak off-season, a lot of the top teams in Korea had actually upgraded their rosters. All this being said, Samsung Galaxy started the 2016 spring split with 3 consecutive series wins. In these games, Crown had impressive performances on Victor, winning on the champion 4 times and beating EM Fire and Longzhu with perfect KDAs. Going into their next series, their strength would be tested. They would be facing SKT T1. In Game 1, Crown's on his Victor and he accumulates a 30 CS lead over Faker at 15 minutes. Pretty impressive. The game is very slow, as a lot of Korean games during this era were, but Crown puts up a strong performance against a much better team, even going for brave plays like solo killing Faker at 16 minutes.
Has the essence, Reva, but it's more of a
building block item when he gets his second item. Faker again.
Faker has to burn that flash again, and he
Gets
gets
it.
taken down. Crown with the 1v1 kill on Faker.
Solo killed by Crown. You talked about what a difference this guy in the roster is.
And then 2 minutes later, initiating a 1v2 on Faker and Bengi, showcasing his expert knowledge on his champion's damage output. During a fight of 34 minutes, I love how long Crown holds his ult here. Instead of just bursting the front line, he waits until SKT are on the retreat and clumped up, AoE slowing everyone and giving his team the opportunity to chase. If he had ulted at the beginning, it may have killed Tamkench and Fresh a little quicker, but it also would have given Lucian and Gangplank the ability to either both get out alive or go back in without the fear of being damaged by Victor ult. Crown's playstyle has become less aggressive and more tempered, but he isn't completely absolved from the overaggression. At 46 minutes, he's killed out of position at Baron, losing the fight and the game. Despite this mishap, Game 1 is a really strong performance from Crown, putting up 667 damage per minute and a 35% damage share. Unfortunately, they still lose the series. So far in the spring split, Crown and Samsung were only able to take wins off of weaker teams, and the fans and analysts were starting to think they couldn't beat a top team. In the second series versus the Rocks Tigers, Crown put those worries to rest. Crown plays well in Game 2 on his Cassiopeia, his spacing in this game is fantastic, and he's able to put out a lot of damage in teamfights. Notably flashing in during the last fight to end it with a big ultimate.
Frey could do it, can't find it though. Kube low, there's a double kill from Crown. Nice.
Samsung Galaxy win Game 3 in a dominant fashion, with Crown on Lulu supporting Ambition on Kindred. They moved to 7 series wins after this one, putting them in the top 5. With only a few weeks left, they were sure to make playoffs if they kept playing this well. Unfortunately, they lose to the rising Afrika Freaks the next week in a tight 3-game series, but quickly bounce back to beat Jin Air Green Wings in week 11. In Game 3, Crown picks Varus, a champion he's performed quite well on throughout the split, and secures his first career pentakill in the last fight.
Crown finishes him off. Trace comes in though, grabs him up. The Chain of Corruption comes through, locking down Pilot. He falls. A double kill for Crown. The Nexus turret's going down, and this is going to be the game after a very long skirmish against the tanky members of Jin Air. Triple kill, I guess, here. But Wing gonna fall.
Penta,
Penta, can he get it?
Can Crown get the Penta kill? They're gonna give it to
They're
a
gonna give it to
Penta!
him, and there it is. Crown with the pentakill at the end of this game.
This is honestly a really impressive feat, as Crown's a mid laner and pentakills are usually reserved for AD carry players. What's even cooler is that Crown's the only mid laner in the LCK to get a penta this entire season. Samsung are now at 9 wins and 6 losses. Meanwhile, the Afrika Freaks have quickly gone from 3-7 to 7-7 in 2 weeks, threatening Samsung's playoff spot. The final 3 series of Crown's spring season would be crucial to whether they make playoffs. The last few weeks of their schedule should be rather easy, with 2 bottom tier teams in Longzhu and Kongdu Monsters, teams they've beaten before. The biggest challenge going forward then would be their second series against SKT T1. Sadly, Crown loses to both SKT and Longzhu, ending his split 10 wins to 8 losses. He just needs to hope Afrika lose the rest of their games too. However, the Afrika Freaks have different plans. They continue their miracle run and win 3 out of 4 of their last games. This also put them at 10 wins and 8 losses, tying with Samsung Galaxy. Because they have a tied series score, the LCK uses the game scores to see who places higher. Afrika have won 2 more games overall than Samsung and placed 5th. Samsung Galaxy finished 6th and narrowly miss out on playoffs. Despite improving massively from last year, Crown was still locked out of the top standings. He was still missing out on the chance to win a trophy. But the lack of playoffs qualification shouldn't distract from Crown's strong individual performance, ranking 1st in CS per minute among mid laners and 3rd in DPM and damage percentage. He even solo killed Faker and got a pentakill. Crown had improved massively since last year, and he was looking like he would be in contention for 3rd or even 2nd best mid laner come summer. The truth is, his team just hadn't worked it all out yet. They were losing to teams they should have beaten, and a part of that was because they were lacking a real carry threat in the bot lane, having to split time between 2 average AD carries. Going into the 2016 summer split, and their last chance to perform well enough to qualify for the World Championship, they would need to make some changes. With the clear weaknesses in the team lying in the bot lane, Samsung started with bringing in a new AD carry player. In May 2016, Edgar scouted an up-and-coming rookie who had just played in the Challengers Korea series, just like Crown had not too long ago. His name was Bung. The god-awful name aside, he was a mechanical talent with real hypercarry potential, exactly what the team needed. After a recommendation from Edgar, Bung changed his name to Ruler. To make room for a new AD carry signing, one of either Stitch or Core JJ had to go. The fan perception had Core JJ ranked lower than Stitch, resulting in Core JJ role swapping to the support role instead of outright getting benched. This would be a change that wouldn't see a payoff until much later in the season, as Wraith would play the vast majority of games in the summer split. With their new super carry and Ruler, Samsung Galaxy were keen to improve on their 6th place finish. Their opening game was against the Rocks Tigers, the team that finished first in the spring regular split and second in the spring playoffs. This was an absolute statement series from Crown. He played Victor and Varus to near perfection, putting up a series KDA of 8.3, with 16 kills, 17 assists, and only 4 deaths. He did 1,195 damage per minute, which was 500 more than his counterpart on the Rocks Tigers and Kuro. In Game 2 on Varus, Crown did 45.6% of his team's damage, receiving the most valuable player vote. This opening series let everyone in the league know that Summer Crown had loaded in, and Samsung didn't stop there. They won their next 2 series against their last split rivals, the Afrika Freaks, and newcomers MVP. They didn't even drop a single game in their opening weeks. Samsung and Crown end week 2 in first place. In their first series against Jinair Greenwings, Crown looks like he might be having a rough game too. He's died 4 times and hasn't taken part in a single kill. His team are down 7,000 gold, but at 38 minutes, Samsung dig deep, defending their inhibitor tower, swinging the game in their favour.
Blocked immediately by Wraith, throws that Braum ultimate back again. Samsung just kiting backwards as Jinair dives. Cuvée in the middle, but he's kind of on his own. Tries to get away here, ults out. Kuzan goes deep, gets killed off. Samsung might be able to turn this one around. They do lose their turret. Pilot really low though. Can he escape? Ambition going in, doesn't have that collateral damage. Here comes a TP from Kuvée. Flashes ahead for the kill, makes a big play there, and now Samsung all over Jinair. Shay gonna get caught, gonna get taken down. Tries to go on to Ruler, but Ruler just gets right out with that QSS in the arcade.
The addition of Ruler to the team has given Samsung the opportunity for comebacks like this, especially when Crown isn't having the best game. In spring, they would have without a doubt lost this game. Despite the bad KDA and lack of participation in the early game, Crown ends the game with a monstrous 1,069 damage per minute stat, the highest in the game. Even being behind, he's still contributing in teamfights. Samsung win and are now 4-0. In their much anticipated match versus SKT, Samsung fought tooth and nail but lose 0-2. SKT really do look unstoppable this split, running over the supposed second best team in the league. Crown has still yet to fulfill his dream of beating SKT, and the Demon King Faker still looms over him. In week 5, Samsung play KT Rolster, a team they have failed to beat for 2 years running. Game 1 is a nightmare with Samsung subbing in Core JJ support. They get near perfect gamed, not even securing a single kill. Showing up here is really important for Samsung as KT are one of their main competitors for Worlds qualification. SKT T1 and Rocks Tigers were almost certain to qualify, which only left 1 spot left. Game 2 is much more competitive, with Wraith rejoining the team. It goes late, and at 54 minutes in, KT Rolster wins a nail-biter teamfight, beating Samsung 2-0. If Crown wants to make Worlds this year, he'd have to beat KT eventually. The summer split continues as you'd expect for a team of Samsung's pedigree. After all, they're now a top team, floating in around the top 4. They beat every team you'd expect them to, which is a large improvement on the spring performance where they would lose games to weaker teams. In fact, bar one series against Longzhu Gaming, they only lose to teams that are stronger than them. KT Rolster, Rocks Tigers, and SKT T1. There is no real threat to them not making playoffs this time round, as the next team closest to them in the standings is 4 wins behind. Samsung perform as expected and finished the split with 12 wins and 6 losses, securing 4th place and qualify for playoffs. This is Crown's first real attempt at winning the LCK, and he was a big reason why his team found so much success this split. He was awarded Most Valuable Player 7 times, accumulating 700 MVP points, which put him in 9th in the MVP standings. He was the highest ranked player from his team and the 3rd ranked mid laner, being only 100 points behind Faker. He even beat out Rocks Tigers Kuro and KT Rolster's Fly, the 2 other mid laners who were above him in the team standings. On top of this, out of all the starting mid laners, he held the highest CS per minute and was 3rd in damage and gold per minute. He amazingly had the highest damage percentage out of anyone in the league, making up 31.8% of his team's damage on average. At 15 minutes he was averaging on being 6 CS ahead of his opponent, and he had the 2nd highest solo kills of any mid laner, at 9. Crown was doing a lot of things really well for his team, and most people would hold him easily in the top 3 mid laners. What's even more impressive is he really excelled on particular champions. He He became known for his Victor, where he boasted a 73.3% win rate over 15 games, which was way higher than the average 52% win rate. He was also doing about 100 more damage per minute on the champion than the average pro player, capping out at 1076 damage per minute against the Rocks Tigers. He was considered the best in the world at Victor, and it clearly showed as Crown played him 15 times out of the 40 games he played in the regular season. That's 37.5% of all his games. Going into playoffs, Crown was looking exceptional, but he had huge obstacles to overcome in the teams he couldn't beat throughout the year. KT Rolster, the Rocks Tigers, and SKT-T1 all qualified for playoffs, as well as the Afrika Freaks. Samsung would start in the first round as they placed 4th during the regular split. This means that if they want to win the whole thing, they'll need to beat every single top team in a best of 5 match. Considering they'd only beaten one of these top teams before, they were the clear underdogs. In round 1, they play against the Afrika Freaks and easily beat them 2-0. The games weren't close, with Crown playing Lissandra both games, ending with a scoreline of 12-4 and 19. Next, they would face off against the first of the 3 LCK Titans. They would play against KT Rolster in the semi-finals, a team they'd lost to 16 games in a row. But this time was different, right? Samsung Galaxy had clearly showed they were a top team. They finally had a real carry player in the bot lane with Ruler, and their star mid laner was perhaps the second or best in the league. Surely this would be the time they would finally overcome their curse of losing to the top teams. Samsung Galaxy play 3 games against KT Rolster, and lose all 3 of them. They weren't even close. The series as a whole felt very defeatist from the get-go. Samsung was subbing in Helper and Stitch, even though their counterparts Kuve and Ruler were clearly better, and had way more practice with the starting lineup. Crown himself didn't play to his normal standard either. KT Rolster had banned his Varus every single game, taking out one of his best picks. KT were now 19-0 against Samsung, and would go on to make it to the finals, where they would lose to the Rocks Tigers.
16, as the Nexus goes down, that is it. KT will take the match. 3-0, GG.
7 series in a row now, 19-0 lifetime against Samsung.
With the LCK summer playoffs over, both Rocks and SKT would qualify for Worlds, leaving only 1 space left. 4 teams would compete to be the last LCK representative at the 2016 League of Legends World Championship. Jin Green Wings, the Afrika Freaks, Samsung Galaxy, and the team that seemed to always have their number, KT Rolster. Due to their strong summer performance, Samsung would skip round 1 and go straight to the second round, where they would play the Afrika Freaks. Samsung and Crown had bested Afrika all split long, they were clearly a level above them, but that didn't stop Afrika winning game 1 and pushing Crown 1 step further away from Worlds qualification. With their backs against the wall, Edgar decided to make a roster change. Historically, this hasn't been the correct decision. The tried and tested roster of Kuve, Ambition, Crown, Ruler and Wraith seems to be the way, but Core JJ had been performing really well in practice, and Edgar saw the angle. To literally everyone's surprise, Core JJ subs in over Wraith and Samsung win the next 3 games, knocking Afrika out and qualifying for the finals.
An ace for Samsung, and that will be a trip to the final match in the gauntlet against KT Rolster. Winner goes to Worlds. Have to see who takes that one on Saturday, but for now, GG.
Nicely done by Samsung.
In the last 3 games, Crown put up a KDA of 12, going 18-3 and 18. His Talia, Zillion and Malzahar were a cut above the Afrika's mid laner Mickey. Awaiting for Crown in the regional finals was KT Rolster, a team he hadn't beaten for 19 games in a row. A team that had just taken Rocks Tigers to 5 games in the LCK finals. If Crown wanted to advance to the World Championship, he would need to overcome the team that had haunted him for the past 2 years. Everyone knew Crown was a hard worker, but the extent of how much effort he was willing to put into his dreams and goals was revealed in an interview with Fomos. He speaks openly about his struggles after losing to KT Rolster throughout the season and the playoffs. We definitely had great results, however when others praised me, I didn't know if I had really done well. I was especially frustrated when we lost to KT in the regular season and postseason. I thought, do we really have to lose so helplessly? Crown was clearly the 3rd, if not the 2nd best mid laner in Korea at this point, but his team was still unable to win a championship or even make a deep run in playoffs. It must have been hard for Crown to see how well he was actually playing when the results didn't line up. Crown supposedly gave up all his vacation days during the break between playoffs and the World Championship qualifier. Whilst other players were resting and relaxing, Crown was practicing. From this interview, we learned Crown suffers from insomnia, so he would play all through the night and was the only one left in the practice room. His lack of sleep got so bad, Coach Edgar would ensure he had a separate room so he could rest without interruption. Despite the discomfort from a lack of sleep and wrist strain, one thing kept him going: to beat KT Rolster and qualify for Worlds. Crown's dream of being a pro gamer like Jaedong was still very much apparent. I didn't get tired of practicing, but I was really lonely. The reason I was able to practice without losing my original intention was because of the frustration of not being able to beat the KT mid laner even once.
너무 분하고 화나고 그래서 그냥 다음 선발전에서 그냥 KT만 꼭 이겨보자.
Coming off a strong series versus Afrika, Crown only had one task left to do: beat KT Rolster. He had the drive, he had the talent, his team were looking even better now that Core JJ had found his footing, but this series would still be a momentous challenge. Nonetheless, Samsung come out swinging with a dominant game 1. Crown carries on his Victor, going 10-0 and getting a triple kill at a 30-minute teamfight.
That one comes out, and Someday a little bit caught here. Curtain call used. They're going to drop the GP ult on that too. A little bit of a premature fight. Tempered Fate takes the Jhin ultimate away. Someday drops the equalizer. He's very low already. Core JJ just trying to slow him up. There's a kill for Crown. 2 kills come in for Samsung. Fly going down as well. He's exhausted, can't get away. That's a double for Ruler. Hajani trying to get an answering kill onto Kube, but he's not going to be able to do it. Looks like
This is the first game Samsung have won against KT Rolster in nearly 2 years. They'd finally shown they could break the curse. They just needed to do it 2 more times. But KT had other plans. Samsung lose the next 2 games and are now 1 loss away from failing to make Worlds. If Crown loses this next game, all the hard work he had put in this year would be for nothing. The thousands of practice games, the hours of sleepless nights, the missed vacations, the lack of recognition. Whatever the outcome of this next game, Crown was sure to put in everything he had. KT start game 4 by banning Crown's Victor, ensuring he won't be able to carry on his strongest pick. Instead, they lock in Talia. With their last pick, Samsung surprised everyone and draft Skarner in the jungle for Ambition.
Winning matchup. Did well in lane, but saw the
Whoa,
limitations.
Skarner locked in.
Wow, Skarner. Okay, this is the first Skarner we have seen in
nice.
a really, really long time.
A champion who hasn't seen any play and is regarded as weak. This is a running theme for Samsung Galaxy. They value perceived weakness. Core JJ is a role swap support who was relegated in North America. Ambition, another role swap player, was declining in his career before being given a second chance. And of course, Crown himself was a reject from the Brazilian league, where he was considered one of the shit Koreans. This team took the disregarded and made them into weapons. Picking a 0 play rate champion like Skarner was a testament to that philosophy, and it paid off. Samsung dominate in game 4 and bring the series to 2-2. The next game would decide who would go to Worlds and have the chance to play on the biggest stage to show the world they were one of the best. In the final game, KT bans the surprise Skarner, and Samsung pick Crown a supportive champion in Karma. His role this game is to protect and give his ADC Ruler mobility. The pick is especially strong into the enemy Lissandra, who is looking to engage and do large AoE damage. Karma offers her team an equally big AoE shield, effectively nullifying Lissandra's engage. The game is relatively close up until a 20-minute teamfight where KT's mid laner, Fly, finds a huge engage angle. If this lands, the enemy Gnar is in a prime position to get a big ult and decimate Samsung. Fortunately, Fly whiffs the engage and Samsung capitalize on his mistake. They win the fight and continue to push their lead. With Samsung ahead, the game comes down to one final dragon fight. Kube gets a massive cannon engage off of Crown buffing the entire team. The fight is won almost immediately. Crown wants more and chases the enemy mid laner, eventually killing him. I see this as Crown wanting to get that small victory for himself, to tell himself he's better than Fly. And with that, Samsung close out the series 3-2 with Crown finally overcoming KT Rolster. Just look at his reaction to winning.
2016, Ambition and Samsung are going to Worlds. GG.
What a huge moment for Ambition. His first World Championship, one of the longest tenured players in the entire world of League of Legends. And now he is there. Celebrations in the booth from the coaches. Core JJ comes into the gauntlet and helps carry this Samsung team. What a story for Samsung, losing all their players in 2014, and now they're back.
I mean, you gotta hand it to the staff in this organization to be able to rebuild this team like this after, essentially nothing. They lost everybody. Crown overcome there, and he was a big...
Crown is overcome by joy, breaking down into tears. He's relieved and happy he could finally tell the world he was good. This victory meant so much to him, but he was also exhausted from the practice and pressure he had put on himself. In the same interview with Fomos, Crown says this, reflecting on his win against KT and his future at the World Championship. No matter how hard it is, you shouldn't be discouraged. And even if things go well, you shouldn't be complacent. The goal I can promise as a pro gamer is to show good games and results. For most players, making Worlds would have been a good result. But Crown wanted to be like his hero Jaedong and win many championships. Just turning up wasn't good enough. He was going to the World Championship, and he was going to win.
Don't just say you need a break, and then the Crown is gonna respond. Now Cloud Templar said, even though you guys had a hard time in the second and third, you did it very well, Crown. And Crown is saying that because of the coach, we can work very hard, and I think the all victory is made by coach, and it's all coach job. It's I mean, like, he cannot say any more word right now.
Samsung Galaxy were placed in Group D, which many coined the Group of Death, as it included 4 teams from major regions. The number 1 seed from North America in TSM, the number 2 from China's LPL in Royal Never Give Up, Samsung Galaxy themselves, and Europe's last seed, Splice. They would play each other twice over the course of 2 weeks, and the top 2 teams would qualify for the playoffs. Every game here was important. One defeat might mean you don't qualify for the next round, and your World streams finish in a flash. Crown wasn't going to let that happen. Before Worlds began, the official Riot Games analysts put together a tier list of the top 20 players. Crown was included on the list at number 19. I understand the list was made for the wider audience, and they may not have been super familiar with Korean League of Legends, and especially not of Crown, but I can't help but think he's criminally underrated here. Spawn even ranks him at 26th, which is just laughable. When you look at some of the players who are rated above him, like Looper, Doublelift, Miffy, Trick, even Duke to an extent, it seems really odd that arguably the second best mid laner in Korea and the most important player on his team is ranked so low. That being said, I think it's best to take this list with a grain of salt, as it's there to create hype and entertainment. Deficio at least ranks him 15th and gives him his praise.
He's almost everything for this team, together with Ambition. These two guys holding hands are kind of carrying the rest here. And to your point about, not playing Assassins, he plays LeBlanc already, he plays Syndra a lot in solo queue, he has a lot of these different picks ready. It's not like any mid laner looking at the entire year has played a lot of Assassins because they haven't been meta for the entire year. So this guy, with the amount he practices, with the bootcamp coming in, I think he's going to have zero issues with champion pool. I think he's going to be, as I said earlier, one of the absolute best mid laners, and that is enough for me to put him actually very high on my list. Also because I think Samsung is a very underrated team who will surprise a lot of people.
If anything, Crown being an underdog here is to his advantage. Going into week 1 of the group stage, Samsung's starting roster includes Wraith over Core JJ, despite the latter having a better recent performance. Their first game is against Splice, and Crown utterly annihilates them with his Victor. The rest of the world clearly weren't aware yet of how insanely good he was on this champion. Just look at these stats. A KDA of 8, 10 CS per minute, and 1000 DPM. Crown had truly arrived on the international stage.
Crown, let's talk a little bit about this Worlds for you. What does it mean for you to be at this Worlds and competing against such big names for the mid lane?
일단은 처음에는 여기 이 자리에 올 거라는 상상도 못 하고 있었는데 막상 오게 돼서 게임을 하니까 그냥 너무 재밌는 것 같아요. 네.
To be honest, I couldn't even imagine being here at Worlds, and now I'm here playing at this big stage. It's just so much fun.
TSM. TSM.
Very good, very good. Well, they're playing right now. We'll see what happens.
However, we may have spoken too soon, as their next game against TSM goes, for a lack of a better word, horribly. Crown is in an awful matchup against Bjergsen's Syndra, and Samsung solo laners end the game with a combined score of 0-10. This loss against TSM would be the last time we see Wraith this tournament, as Core JJ is subbed in for the rest of the games. And by the looks of things, it's the correct decision. Samsung win every remaining group stage game after Core JJ comes in. They 2-0 RNG and Splice and take revenge on TSM in a close 45-minute game where Crown shows Doublelift why he should have been ranked higher than him in the top 20.
for zero. Double lift. Oh, and it gets deleted. Looks for the play, turns right back around on him.
Crown has great performances across these last 4 games, being ahead in CS and experienced at 15 minutes against all opposing mid laners in the group. He also gets 2 solo kills against Bjergsen in their second match, further showcasing why he shouldn't be allowed to play Victor. Samsung finished first in the group at 5 wins and 1 loss. They qualify for playoffs as the first seed, giving them a favourable matchup in round 1. And a favourable matchup it was. Crown faces Cloud9 in the quarterfinals.
북미 팬들에게 미안하지만 저희도 이기려고 여기 왔고.
Despite banning Victor all series, Samsung easily sweep Cloud9 3 wins to 0 losses. In game 1 at the 6-minute mark, Cloud9 tried to 3-man gank Crown, which was a big mistake. Crown ends up turning the 3v1 into a solo kill for himself and gets out alive. In a 2017 interview with Foreign, the enemy mid laner Jensen recalls Crown's performance this series.
I felt like Crown was really good. I think he's probably around the same level as Faker, honestly. At least his laning phase, like he's really good at laning, like he pressures you a lot, and he has insane mechanics, like you saw.
The quarter-final match versus Cloud9 wasn't about Crown, with Jensen actually matching him quite impressively. Samsung's top laner and bot lane were just completely outclassing the North American side. Samsung advanced to the semi-finals and are one step closer to winning the World Championship. Going into the semi-finals of playoffs, 4 teams remained. On one side of the bracket, SKT and the ROX Tigers would clash. This series is considered one of the greatest of all time, and saw SKT T1 being pushed to 5 close games before winning. A lot of people view this as the real finals due to Samsung having quite an easy road against weaker teams. On the other side of the playoff bracket, Crown would have to play against another Western team in Europe's H2K. Having to only beat non-Asian teams to make it to the World Finals was seen as rather lackluster. The quality of Samsung was hard to rate as their opponents weren't necessarily that strong, especially when SKT had to play RNG and ROX Tigers to make it to the finals. That being said, Samsung easily sweep their semi-finals opponents, winning 3-0 with Crown completely demolishing his lane opponent, Ryu. Comparing the series stats between these 2 players is honestly kinda gross. Crown was ahead an average of 37 CS at 15 minutes. He had over double the average damage per minute of Ryu and triple his KDA. Crown was completely outclassing his opponent here. Albeit H2K conceded Victor 2 of the 3 games, which as we know never goes well for teams that play against Crown. Samsung were now on a 10-game winning streak, having not lost once since Core JJ subbed in during the group stage. They were looking really good, even if their opponents weren't considered strong. With their games against H2K over, Samsung and Crown would be heading to the World's Finals against 2-time world champion SKT T1 and the Demon King himself, Faker. In a post-game interview with Riot Games, Crown's asked his thoughts about playing SKT T1 in the finals.
Thank you very much, Trevor. Indeed, standing by with Crown, who had an absolutely fantastic series. Now you're going up against the defending world champions, SKT, at Staples Center. What are your hopes and goals for that matchup, as it will be a tough nut to crack?
결승을 가는 게 지금 좀 가는 게 맞는지 싶어요. 지금 기분이. 근데 어제 경기를 보고 새로운 목표가 생겼는데 SK를 이기려면 미드를 이겨야 되는 것 같아요. 그래서 이기고 싶어졌어요. 그래서 열심히 할 거고, 네, 지켜봐 주세요. 감사합니다.
In another interview with the Score Esports, he's asked a similar question, but gives a much more thoughtful response.
Well, then I have to ask with that question, between you and Faker, who is better?
그거는 LOL을 플레이하는 선수들이나 이제 팬들 중에 100명이 있다면 100명한테 물어봐도 당연히 페이커 선수인데, 저는 지금 도전자의 입장으로 왔어요. 그리고 지금도 오늘도 도전을 했고, 그다음 이제 결승전에서도 아마 도전을 하게 될 것 같은데, 그때 제가 정말 만약에 이기게 된다면 그때는 이제 그때 이기고 나면은 제가 더 잘했다고 할 수 있고, 지금은 제가 보여준 것도 많이 없고 페이커 선수가 보여준 게 훨씬 많기 때문에 페이커 선수가 당연히 더 잘한다고 생각합니다.
A year ago, Crown was playing in the Challenger Series, and a few months before that, he was in Brazil. Now he's at the World Championship Finals, staring down the best team in the world.
월드 챔피언십에서 제가 접은 적이 없기 때문에 모든 결승전이 더 중요한 것 같습니다.
자체가 제일 중요할 것 같아요, 이번 결승이. 우리 팀에서. 왜냐면 이제 워낙 잘하는 선수고 제가 꼭 이기거나 아니면 최소 반반 이 정도는 가야 될 것 같고.
Going up against SKT, Crown would have to prove that it wasn't just a lucky draw, they'd earned their place in the finals.
First up, representing the LCK, Samsung Galaxy. In the mid lane, Crown.
Crown locks in Victor for the opening game. Let's see how Crown's best champion fares against Faker. The beginning is quite slow, but Crown does manage to solo kill Faker.
So chooses. This makes it difficult for Crown. Look, he already burned some summoner spells, and he's ulted now twice just to shove out the wave. Might have some kills, right?
Lashes still gets got the last tick. He's on Crown. Solo kills Faker.
SKT, however, takes an early lead, resulting in a Baron at 32 minutes. The game is drawn out with SKT slowly suffocating Samsung for the next 10 minutes, until they finally decide to go for the end. Samsung successfully defend their Nexus, with Crown picking up a double kill on his Victor.
GA, so does Ambition. It's been popped already though. He's in trouble. There's a kill onto Faker. Not enough for the game just yet. Ambition dashes to safety. Safeguards to a teammate. It's a double kill for Crown. He's not willing to give up the game just yet.
Despite there being a large gold gap, Samsung try for the comeback and take a Baron for themselves. During a fight of 53 minutes, Crown is caught out by Faker's Orianna and is absolutely obliterated. The game is over. SKT take the first win and Crown loses on his best champion. SKT's fury doesn't stop there, with game 2 being a slaughter. Samsung lose in 30 minutes and Crown doesn't look like he can do anything.
Enough, and Duke will get popped, but just the GA. Round one from Faker will allow him to get a double kill onto Ruler. Forward for more. Core JJ on the steps of the fountain is killed by the god Faker himself, and SKT are 2-0 in the finals.
And that's the type of defeat you don't want to have if you're Samsung, because this is the momentum building of SKT's War Machine, as they are now one game away from their third World Championship in 4 years.
One more loss and an entire year of hard work is seemingly wasted. Perhaps his only chance to claim a World's title would be gone. It's important to put into context how dire Crown's and Samsung's situation is here. Being 2 games down versus Prime SKT in 2016 is a death sentence. Only KT were able to do this, and it was a complete and utter shock to everyone. But this wasn't LCK playoffs. This was the World's finals, and SKT and Faker have a 100% win rate in the finals. They've never lost, and at this point it really doesn't look like they ever will. On top of this, people were already hailing the semi-final match between Rox Tigers and SKT as the real finals. So if Samsung get easily swept here, no one is going to remember them. Crown would need to dig deep if he wants a chance at reverse sweeping the defending world champions. In Game 3, Samsung do what they do best, embody the underdog. They pick Crown a champion that was niche and hadn't been picked a huge amount, Aurelion Sol. This was a bold choice, as Aurelion Sol requires a lot of map movement to pilot successfully, and Crown preferred to play through his own lane, mechanically beating out his opponents. I guess the theory here was that Crown couldn't dominate Faker in lane, as he had done against every other mid laner in the world. So instead, they put him on a heavy roam champion like Aurelion Sol and would hope to make plays across the map. Unfortunately, it doesn't go like this at all. Samsung actually concede a lot in the early game and result in being down 9,000 gold at 29 minutes, with SKT starting the Baron. The game is honestly looking lost at this point. Faker and Bang both have free items to Crown and Rulers too. The only thing that Samsung have in their favour is the 4 dragons, which would only really pay off if they were able to secure an Elder Drake. But with the current pace of the game, and with SKT being so far ahead, the chances of Samsung holding out long enough for an Elder Dragon is quite low. But what do underdogs like more than anything? Low chances. Samsung realise the enemy ADC isn't on the Baron. Ruler takes this chance to isolate him and tears SKT to shreds. In hindsight, SKT had no right to start this Baron even though they were so far ahead. It was really a cocky move as their ADC was in base when they started it, and they basically had zero vision of the enemy blue side. But this just demonstrates how insane SKT was in 2016. They were willing to make decisions like this because they knew they were just better. Samsung took the bluff, and instead of crumbling like so many teams before them, they made their own path. Believe it or not, this game goes on for another 40 minutes. It's incredibly back and forth, with both teams making miracle plays. Notably, Ambition saves the game by stealing Elder Drake at 67 minutes.
Now trying to establish vision control and force
Can he steal? Take that Ambition! Ambition steals the Elder Dragon! He gets away with lives!
Giving Samsung the push they need to finish the game. This is the second longest game at Worlds ever. The resilience to play through a game like this is insane, especially when you're already 2 games down. Overall, Crown had an okay game. I can't imagine he had much practice on Aurelion Sol, especially not in a 70-minute long game. He does land a pretty important 4-man ultimate during the last Baron fight, which stops SKT committing to the fights and allows Samsung to secure Baron. With this win, Samsung aren't out of the woods just yet. They're still 1 game away from losing the series and would need to win the next 2 themselves. Game 4 then would need to be theirs. Crown goes back to comfort on Victor. In another long game, Samsung clinch victory through superior team fighting.
It's not reset just yet. Curtain call onto Wolf is going to get interrupted by the tidal wave, and Cube has found Bang and push them away. But Blank is bouncing all up in Samsung Galaxy. The shockwave kills Cube. Bank is going low. Blank is going to flash away. Duke's in trouble. Ruler can't get the kill. He does in the end. Sends him packing with a deadly flourish. Now Duke's in trouble. The GA's pop. Ruler gets another. Finds the shutdown. Turns his attention into Duke. And Samsung Galaxy...
Crown puts out 899 damage a minute, second only to his ADC. Samsung win, tying the series 2-2. They're only 1 win away from being the best team in the world. Crown is 1 win away from being that step closer to his dream of a pro gamer. He would write himself down in the history books, next to Jaedong. The final game of the 2016 World Championship Finals is the closest in the series. Faker takes the victor away from Crown and bans the Aurelion Sol, which puts Crown on Cassiopeia. Crown gets an early gank from Ambition, securing a kill on Faker, but both Ambition and Crown die as a result. The game continues to be incredibly even, with both teams claiming small victories over the map. It really does look like SKT have met their match. Crown is going toe to toe with peak Faker and staying even. I really don't think any other mid laner could have done this. At 22 minutes, Samsung catch Faker on the mid wave, killing him and subsequently taking another kill to win the fight. The game is in their hands now. They have a small gold lead and the confidence they can win fights. Sadly, they struggle to push their lead any further, and SKT catch out members of Samsung on too many different occasions. This particular pick at 36 minutes on Ruler's Jhin is the crux of their downfall. Samsung lose Core JJ, and SKT are able to take Baron and the Elder Dragon. The game continues for another 10 minutes, but there's really not a huge amount Crown and Samsung can do. SKT have a lead, and as they do to every other team, begin to suffocate their opponents. For a game that was dead even for 30 minutes, SKT made it look like a stomp in the last 10. As someone who watched this game live back in 2016, huddled around the sofa with his friends at some early hour in the morning, I really thought for a moment that SKT had been bested, that they had finally found a challenger to beat them at Worlds. Samsung had shown they could take them on in fights, but all my friends were pretty confident SKT would still just win it, like they always do. But I was cheering Samsung on every time they found some small lead, every time they were able to delay the game or stop SKT pushing their advantage. So when SKT eventually did win, like they always do, I felt genuine sadness. Watching Crown just sit there for a good few minutes, soaking in the biggest loss of his career, made me want to just give the man a hug, to tell him he did good, that he just went even with the greatest player to ever touch the game, to give him some small amount of recognition that he truly deserved. After Worlds, Crown was incredibly hard on himself, regretting his inability to play champions like Orianna and Syndra to a good enough level. Despite being a top performing mid laner, there's some truth to this, as Samsung banned Syndra every single game of the finals, revealing that Crown wasn't comfortable on the champion. He also only played one game of Orianna the entire tournament. Although he had 6 unique champion picks, which was joint third out of all the mid laners, he was still unable to play the strong champions that Faker did so well, making the matchup between them rather difficult from a drafting perspective. Even though they lost, Crown took these thoughts of self-doubt and turned them into something good. If you can't do it, practice. Most of Crown's teammates have some sort of story referencing how Crown threw himself into practice as soon as they got back to Korea after Worlds. CoreJJ recalled, "Honestly, I was satisfied with making the finals. However, as soon as Minho returned after the World Championship, he calmed down and played solo ranked. I was amazed by that sight. In the end, he reached Challenger and finished the season." In fact, Crown was the only Worlds attending Korean player to reach Challenger at the end of the season. Most players go on vacation or take the game less seriously as they've just played a hugely draining month-long tournament. But Crown continued to practice. With many more testimonies from Edgar and Ruler, it was evident that Crown was just ready to get back into it. But it's Ambition's account that speaks the most truth. He says, "There's nothing better than a teammate who works hard and does well. Crown was the type to be stubborn and just play the game until he succeeds. I don't think there was ever a time when our teammates were dissatisfied with the amount of practice. But on the other hand, I felt sorry for Crown. When things weren't going well, he would keep going and actually beat himself up. You could see that. He was a player who didn't take care of himself." It's evident that Crown took each loss personally, seeing it as a failure of himself. It really must have been challenging for Crown to play during an era where peak Faker existed. He was clearly better than most of the mid laners playing, peaking above them all. But he was never able to best Faker. No one was. So when your team loses against SKT and Faker in the World's Finals, you would probably take all the blame, as it was clear you weren't better than him. It's sad, but Crown wasn't going to let it end his career. This wasn't going to be another Starcraft situation where he just gave up on his dreams after not being good enough. Samsung played a few more tournaments at the end of 2016, the Kesper Cup where they lost to Eskever again early on. They also played at IEM Yonggi where they actually won it. Although this wasn't a big tournament and nor did it have particularly strong teams, it was still a nice victory for Crown, who hadn't really won anything in his career. Crown was also awarded MVP for the final series, where he played Orianna twice, showing the practice had paid off. With a win to compensate their loss at Worlds, Samsung would head into Season 7 and the 2017 LCK Spring Split. 2017 was looking like it would be another stellar year for South Korean League of Legends. About half a dozen players from the 2014 Great Korean Exodus were on their way home. Deft, Pawn, and Marta all returned from China's LPL to join Katie Rolster. The incredibly strong ROX Tigers also saw a massive change. The organisation was unable to retain a single one of their 2016 players, which led them to signing 4 out of 5 of last year's Afrika Freaks roster. The previous players signed elsewhere, with their bot lane Praying Gorilla going to Longzhu Gaming, their mid laner Kuro going to the Afrika Freaks, where he would be joined by returning players Marin and Spirit. Smeb, their top laner, would join the Prodigal Sons, Deft, Pawn and Marta on KT Rolster, forming a super team, and Peanut was given the golden chance on SKT T1 after Bengi left for China. Breakup of the ROX Tigers spread the wealth around, and the return of notable players improved the league massively. There were now 4 to 5 contending teams in Korea, with the Afrika Freaks, KT Rolster, Samsung Galaxy, and of course SKT T1, with basically every other team seeing some sort of roster improvement too. Notably Longzhu Gaming and the ROX Tigers, who just needed 1 or 2 things to go well for them to compete. The level of play in the LCK had finally healed to its 2014 OGN equivalent. Performing in the regular season had never been more of a challenge. Crown would need to continue his hot streak if he wanted to win a championship this year. After winning IEM Gyeonggi, Crown was interviewed by Wax Angel for Team Liquid Net. He answered some pretty personal questions regarding how he felt a few months on from coming second at the World Championship. His answers here give a real indication of how important winning is to his mental health. He says, "I don't think I've ever felt happy since we finished in second place. I want to win a championship already so I can find happiness, which is why I'm continuing to play." He was also inevitably asked about Faker and there being a potential rivalry. "I'll practice hard so I can keep making forward progress. Even if we lose and our results are bad, there's always next year. I'll stay the course and work hard so I can eventually become Faker's rival." Crown wanted to equal Faker. It actually makes a lot of sense for why Crown equated success to beating an individual player, like Faker. After all, he was from a professional Starcraft background where young kids were pitted against one another. A 1v1 game creates true rivalries, and Crown had that nailed into him from early on in his career. He saw Faker just like how Flash saw Jaedong, an opponent he needed to overcome to find greatness. And that's exactly what Crown did. The 2017 LCK Spring Split is perhaps Crown's magnum opus. If there was any doubt left that he was the second best mid laner in Korea, perhaps even the best, Crown's 2017 Spring would put those thoughts to bed. He led the mid laners in DPM and was second in team damage percentage, once again showing off how much he was doing for his team. He was, as he usually is, top in CS per minute. On top of this, in all of these stats, Crown was third out of everyone in the league. He had the highest gold, CS and XP differential out of all mid laners, showing how dominant he was in the laning phase. He sat on a respectable 15 solo kills, which was third in all mid laners and only one away from Faker. He was also 20% more likely to be involved in the first kill than any other mid laner. From the stats alone, Crown was the clear-cut best mid laner in the league. But let's look at in-game factors too. What's always differentiated Faker from the rest is his ability to just carry fights and make miracle plays when the team needed him to. Was Crown able to do this too? I think in general, yes. Notable moments from the Spring Split include this exceptional fight on Rise.
Goes in, finds Stitch, works him down quite low, but can't come up with the kill yet. Crown's still full HP, and BBQ just has to be so cautious walking up towards this Rise. They get the GA pop away from QV. Big hit on that fourth and final shot comes through. Crown goes for it, and he takes out the pop. He follows up with another one onto Totoro. He makes it a triple kill as he gets tapped. Can he make it a quadra? Hunting down for Ghost, who's just running for his life.
When he picked LeBlanc, a champion that was incredibly strong in the meta with a 77.9% pick ban presence, Crown was one of the few players who got the chance to play her, showing off why she was deserving of her consistent banning.
Opponent, speaking of which, Crown comes up to the top lane, puts another kill on, thrown down, where JG does get rooted from the deadly flourish, pops that great health shield, kicked away by Bless, who goes low. Crown goes back in, comes up with the kill, but can he make it out alive? Crown almost taking out the Lee Sin. Haru goes in, Dredgeline comes through, he's gonna get popped up yet again, but poor JG says no. Time and time again, and that's just gonna be BBQ getting stomped out. Tempton goes, both fall, Crazy should follow suit. Crown taking up a couple of these turn shots.
He also had fantastic games on Talia, especially against MVP, where he used her ultimate to counter the enemy Scion, putting up his wall to block the Scion engage.
Does anyone else want to come in here? It looks like it's gonna be blocked by the Weaver's wall, but Samsung is going to come in anyway, dodging that stun with the wall, and double kill going over to...
He had this absolutely gross 3-man stun on Syndra versus SKT, taking him back to his mid-modesty days on Hyper.
As QB arrives, the depth charge coming in, pops him up, Dodge Field's going to buy him a little bit of time, but the double stun comes through from Crown, locks him down, and 2 more kills on the board for Samsung. Beautiful roll.
Samsung and Crown actually won this series, marking a victory over the dominant SKT. In fact, Samsung were only one of 2 teams in Spring who were able to take a series win over SKT, and his Syndra was strong enough to best Faker. Speaking of Syndra and Orianna too, Crown improved these 2 picks greatly after failing to use them at the World Championship, incorporating them into his champion pool. He had an average of 84.5% win rate on these 2 champions, and played them a combined total of 13 times. They were by far 2 of his strongest picks. This was much needed firepower in Crown's arsenal, as his Victor pick had been heavily nerfed. A core item of Victor's, Rylai's Crystal Scepter, was no longer as strong as it was in 2016, so Victor was at best a B tier pick rather than an A or S tier one. However, that didn't stop him trying to make it work.
They're going on into Crown 2, forcing the flash out, but there is the root. And Umti getting caught in the gravity field is going to be taken out. Bit of a mistake there, being that close to the turret. And a nice job by Crown.
This spike in his performance was perhaps a direct effect of his hard practice after coming second at Worlds. When he secured Challenger at the end of the 2016 season, he decided to only play games on champions he needed to improve on, i.e. the Orianna and Syndra, instead of on champions he could easily take victories on, like Victor. But it was also partly due to Samsung recruiting another ex-CG Entus jungler in Haru. With this addition, Samsung now had an 8-man roster comprising of Kuve, Ambition and Haru, Crown, Ruler and Stitch, and Core JJ and Wraith. You'd think having such a convoluted team dynamic like this would result in a poor and messy performance, but it was the opposite. They would play the proven Ruler and Core JJ bot lane for most of Spring, but would sub in Stitch and Wraith every now and then. Aru, on the other hand, took the lead over Ambition and played the majority of the spring games. Aru was a high-tempo mechanical jungler who focused on ganking, playing champions like Rengar, Kha'Zix, Lee Sin and Graves. This complemented Crown's control style, where he would often support his jungler in roaming the map to take kills in other lanes, as well as setting his own lane up for easy ganks. Together they had some pretty impressive stats, including an overwhelmingly high first blood rate, with Haru having a 56.7% first blood participation and Crown having a 42.9%, the first and second in the league. They were quite the fearsome duo and together had a 76.7% win rate. Samsung ended the regular split the highest they ever had at 14 wins and 4 losses, securing them second place behind SKT. In the last 4 weeks, Samsung won their remaining 7 series where they beat both KT Rolster and SKT T1. In the second last series against MVP, Crown picked Talia and put up some of the most absurd stats I've ever seen in a pro game. He had a total of 30,000 damage, a 50% damage share of his team, and 1100 damage per minute. He carried this series with a total KDA of 11.5 and was given the most valuable player vote both games. To further cement his dominant spring split, Crown was awarded the regular season MVP vote. He had accumulated 1300 MVP points over the course of the season, establishing carry performances in over a dozen games. The next mid laners closest to him were Mickey at 1100, who was a player outperforming his own team most of the time and had the odd game where he looked incredibly strong but was mostly inconsistent as his team finished 6th. And of course, Faker lingered at the top at 1000 points.
And with today's series, you confirmed that you will be the season MVP for today, and all these people are here cheering for you. You know, when I was younger, I really didn't look for money, but I kind of really looked for the fame. But I think the older I get, you know, I start looking for that cash, and I think, you know, it's getting these kind of rewards and awards to, you know, boost my game. I think we always did have the confidence, you know, heading into the matches. But, you know, result-wise, you have to always think about whether, you know, it turned out always the way we wanted to, and it necessarily didn't. But I think it's just turning out a lot better nearing the end of this season right now. And we want to just continue on this, you know, progression and hopefully, you know, get better results regarding the playoffs. And I'm just really happy about it overall.
Samsung were looking like a strong contender heading into playoffs, and Crown was in the debate for best mid laner in Korea, perhaps even the world. So surely this was the time to overcome Faker and SKT and lift the LCK trophy. Due to their top 2 finish, Samsung secured a place in the semi-finals and would play the winner of KT Rolster and MVP. KT won their series, and they would proceed to face Samsung in the semi-finals. This time, the roles had been reversed. For 2 years, it was Crown and Samsung who were the underdogs, looking to challenge KT Rolster in high-stake games. But now, Crown was the favourite to win, and that's why it's all the more disheartening when Crown lost rather unceremoniously. Samsung had defeated 3 games to 0 wins. Unfortunately, Crown's top laner Cuvée had a stinker series, conceding 18 deaths over 3 games, and his ADC only averaged 300 DPM. For whatever reason, Samsung massively underperformed. On the other side, KT's super team were finally playing like one, with their mid laner Pawn in particular having a glow up. Despite being runner-up at Worlds, winning split MVP, and ending the spring regular season in second place after a 7-series win streak, Crown still failed to win domestically, not even being able to make a domestic finals. The chance to prove that he was the best in Korea still eluded him, and the player he was trying to rival, Faker, would eventually go on to win the LCK and the mid-season international tournament MSI. This now put SKT on a 4 international title win streak with Worlds 2015, MSI 2016, Worlds 2016 and the recent MSI 2017. They just always seemed to win, and for Crown the gap between him and Faker probably seemed further than it ever had been. It was truly becoming impossible for anyone, let alone Crown, to match up against him. Whatever it was that caused Crown Samsung to underperform in the spring playoffs continued to haunt them throughout summer. Although they were still winning games, they looked rather shaky, and Crown specifically was incredibly inconsistent. He was middle of the pack in basically all stats, something he usually excels in. His games just seemed deflated, like he had lost all motivation. Crown was a rather emotional player who struggles when his goals and expectations aren't met. I think Crown assumed Samsung would finally place higher domestically now that they came second at the World Championship. He probably thought after giving such an insane performance in spring that it was finally his time. But League of Legends isn't a 1v1 game like Starcraft, it's a team game. And when one player isn't pulling their weight, the other 4 can help lift them up. Now that Crown himself was having a worse than usual performance, his team really stepped up. Ruler was maturing at an alarming rate, and Ambition was back on track after getting married in spring. Cuvée also seemed to have ironed out most of his issues from earlier in the year. Samsung was still a top team, but that became increasingly less impressive as the LCK now had a new #1 best team. Longzhu Gaming made a few changes from spring to summer, bringing in the dominant solo queue jungler Cuz and the promising top laner Khan, as well as finally giving BDD the chance he deserved. These three young mechanical players, alongside veterans Prey and Gorilla, would make for a formidable team. They finished first in the regular season, with their mid laner BDD winning the MVP vote and also having an insane KDA of 11.31. There was a new best mid laner in town, and Crown was now sitting at 4th or 5th best in the league, with Kuro and Pawn looking like they'd improved, and Faker, well, he was still Faker. Anyone that knows this point in LCK history would say Crown was inconsistent and was outclassed more than usual, but people tend to forget he also had some pretty impressive games. Glimmers of his spring form would occasionally shine through. After all, he still managed to be awarded MVP 9 times, finishing 4th overall in the standings, and this was because when he started playing well, he really started to play well. Quite surprisingly, Samsung went undefeated against SKT in the summer regular split, where Crown had some pretty spectacular performances. He played Syndra in the first series, where he landed a few crucial stuns to win big team fights.
Change that up. Now Hero's entrance coming through for Faker, arriving in, but the double stun comes through. Hootie going low, gets taken out by Crown in the end, and now Faker locked up with the chain of corruption. Has to flash away, can get out of here alive. Nice from Wolf. Gets the stun in the air from Wolf, denying the leap over the wall. Cuvée still goes low, but now Crown arriving, turns it around on his head, takes out Hootie. Unleash power down onto Bang, who's still desperately trying to kite back. Looks like he might be able to stay alive, at least for the moment. TP being burned out here by Faker, a double kill over to Crown, and Peanut goes down. TP has to be...
In their second series, Crown's Talia was genuinely insane, going 14-4 and 17 and dishing out 800 DPM.
Samsung looks to be working. Ruler looks for Wolf. It's a double kill with a threaded volley, and now Cuvée looking for Bang on the backside. They just evaporate him, and Hootie can't get in. Triple kill for Crown as Faker falls down, and Hootie...
Not to mention, Crown secured his second career pentakill in a series against the Freaka Freaks on Cassiopeia.
They will get Ruler, but look at this. Everybody just getting annihilated by Crown. Comes up with the double kill, makes it a triple as he gets rid of Arn and the super creeps. In the meantime, are going to go ahead and start knocking down these Nexus turrets. They will fall. Kuro gonna die. Quadra kill going over to Crown. Can he get the Penta Spirit in? Samsung will complete it. They're going to go for it. Can they find it? A couple more Twin Fangs from Crown to finish this one off. He's so tanky, but he gets it in the end. Penta kill over to Crown. The 2-0 for Samsung.
Although Crown was obviously not at his summer 2016 and spring 2017 peak, he wasn't some bottom tier mid laner. I think when looking back on this period of his career, people tend to just dismiss his performance entirely and make up wide claims like Crown was terrible all summer. But if I were to tell you another top tier mid laner was also having a below average split, that mid laner being Faker, you'd probably just give him the pass. Perhaps you'd even ignore his mishaps because he's the GOAT. There really is a double standard when comparing players in the League of Legends pro scene, as context is never the same between two performances, and we will never know how much practice and input that player is putting in behind the scenes. Even if both Crown and Faker were having below average summer splits, their teams clearly still valued them despite the fan perception. And after all, they were still winning. In fact, Samsung were in the running to finish in first place up until the last game of the regular split. Samsung and Longzhu were both 13 wins and 4 losses, and the winner of the series would place first and automatically qualify for the LCK Summer Finals. Unfortunately, Crown fails to beat the inconsistency allegations and has two rather underwhelming performances on Orianna. With a loss, Samsung finishes 13 wins and 5 losses, placing third and qualify for the summer playoffs alongside the Freaka Freaks, SKT, KT Rolster and Longzhu Gaming. Crown would eventually meet SKT in the quarterfinals, where the same old story unfolded. Samsung lose 3 games and win 0. This has happened every single time Crown faces a top team in the LCK playoffs. Despite a somewhat close game 2, where Samsung was actually in a pretty prime position to win it, they're defeated without putting up much resistance. Honestly, at this point, it seems like Samsung and Crown are just doomed to fail. They didn't seem to have that clutch factor a championship winning team needed. And with their star carry mid laner underperforming, the chances for Worlds qualification seemed far off. Longzhu Gaming would go on to win the LCK Summer Playoffs, with SKT coming second, where Faker showed a really strong performance. Since Longzhu won, they automatically qualified for Worlds as the number 1 seed, with SKT qualifying as the second. This meant only one place was left. Samsung would have to play through the LCK regional qualifiers yet again to qualify for Worlds. If Crown wanted a second chance at winning the World Championship and cementing himself as one of the best players, he would need to overcome his slump. Before we talk about the regional qualifiers, we first need to set the scene and discuss the current meta. For a while now, a certain IM has gone under the radar, Ardent Sensor. This support IM had been buffed at the end of 2016 and then again in January 2017. It was an incredibly cheap IM that turned shielding supports like Lulu, Janna, Karma, and even Rakan and Taric to a whole other level. With Ardent Sensor, heals and shields provided bonus attack speed, on-hit damage, and on-hit healing to their target. This one item provided huge amounts of damage, survivability, and sustain to ADCs. They now had more attack speed and healing without having to buy attack speed and lifesteal items themselves. They were practically one-man armies if recently shielded or healed. This resulted in ADCs becoming the centerpieces for their team, and rushing Ardent Sensor became the new meta. It was so extreme that the ADC player would often buy a support item just to increase the support player's gold income so they could buy Ardent Sensor quicker. For some reason, teams took quite a long time to catch up with how strong Ardent Sensor was, and we didn't really see its prevalence until the summer season began to end. This meta would become the norm in basically every game from summer playoffs until the end of Worlds. If you had a really mechanical ADC player, you were favoured by the meta. Teams became less mid lane carry focused and put more and more gold into their bot lane to take advantage of how strong Ardent Sensor was. For Samsung Galaxy, they were quite happy with this shift in the meta, as their ADC ruler was improving and playing at a really high level, whilst Crown was slightly slumping going into the regional qualifiers. The first team on their road to Worlds is the Afrika Freaks, a team that Samsung had very few issues with throughout the season, but their mid laner Kuro was playing really well and might be the difference maker if Crown doesn't step up. Samsung oddly start Haru here despite Ambition having the better recent performance, as well as the meta having shifted away from the Rengar and Graves that Haru was so good at. Junglers were now playing tankier champions like Sejuani and Gragas, which Ambition was very experienced on. And to Samsung's dismay, playing Haru doesn't work out. Afrika draft a strong bot lane in Kog'Maw and Lulu, which takes full advantage of the Ardent Sensor meta. If Samsung didn't finish this game quickly, Kog'Maw will solo carry the game for Afrika. After quite a back and forth early game, Samsung managed to get two crucial picks on Afrika's ADC, Kramer, and later on their mid laner Kuro. They use this to their advantage and start the Baron. This is where the ticking time bomb of the enemy Kog'Maw explodes in Samsung's face.
Oh well, Kramer's actually looking for it. Rocket Grab does go in as they do throw out the Petrifying Gaze once again, but Kramer is doing so much damage in the front line, flashing after Haru, picks up the kill. That's a triple almost instantly, and he's got full health. They'll get a Baron as well, and this is why you have to kill the Kog'Maw.
There's nothing the low range of Crown's Cassiopeia can really do here, as Kog'Maw just deletes him from a screen away if he's left unchecked. And Kramer's bought a QSS on top of his cleanse, which means he's basically unCCable and unkillable due to Lulu constantly shielding him. Game 2 is another disaster, where Afrika pick Kassadin and just roll over Samsung. It's not even close, and clearly Haru isn't the answer here. To play devil's advocate, it does seem that Afrika have hard won both drafts so far. Crown isn't outright playing awfully, rather there's just not a huge amount to be done when the drafts favour Afrika this much. From coming second at last year's World Championship to not even making it to the final round of the regional qualifiers, Crown is an inch away from just being forgotten. If Samsung crash out here, I really do think there's a chance Crown won't be able to recover from it. Everyone thought Samsung had outgrown their underdog heritage, but in reality, these do or die situations are where this team often found themselves in. Everything would be on the line in this game 3. Samsung would need to pull out an absolute miracle to beat Afrika 3 games in a row. With that being said, Haru is out and Old Man Ambition is subbed in. Samsung draft Karma for Crown, a pick that's used to generally neutralize the enemy mid laner, but Crown usually builds Karma with damage items rather than the supportive ones that are quite strong in the current meta, like the Ardent Sensor. This game will tell us if Crown is willing to adapt to a new role for his team, if he was willing to support his team rather than carry it. Game 3 goes in Afrika's favour for the first 10 minutes with their jungler ganking Crown twice and successfully killing him. At 13 minutes, Afrika botched a pick on Ambition, resulting in 2 kills for Crown. With this gold influx, Crown could begin to build an item like Deathcap or Leandri's, but we see the Aether Wisp in his inventory, and we know he's decided to support his team. Aether Wisp is a component for Ardent Sensor, and Crown makes the right decision in building it. Samsung Galaxy closes this game without any troubles, and Crown does his new role fantastically. Ruler is able to carry without much threat, partly because of Crown's Karma. This game is very obviously different from the previous two, with Samsung drafting for their AD carry, supporting the Zarya with a huge front line as well as the Karma. They seem to now understand their strengths, and it couldn't have come any sooner as they'd need to win the next 2 games to advance to the region qualifier finals against KT Rolster. Game 4 shows just how significant Ant Center is, as Afreeca are willing to draft Lulu, typically a support and sometimes a mid laner, in the jungle role. Samsung respond with Ambition's Kha'Zix, which should win the matchup without much trouble. Despite falling to some early Afreeca ganks, this game is vintage Samsung Galaxy. Anyone who watched professional League of Legends at this time would know Samsung were known for their slow games, where they out-macroed the enemy, accruing gold, and then beat them in one culminating teamfight. The gold advantages would creep up on the enemy, and before they knew it, they would be losing their Nexus. Crown plays Syndra this game, and does what he needs to, going even with Kuro. He provides good stuns in teamfights, and enough damage to kill the enemy ADC, which is hard to do for all the shields on Afreeca. Nonetheless, Samsung win and force the series into one final game.
Kramer's dead, and that means that there is nothing left for the Afreeca Freaks. Nexus turrets to fall next, and despite the blue side, despite everything about games 1 and 2, Samsung setting themselves up to equal the Afreeca Freaks, bring us to that potential reverse sweep, and get themselves back to the red side.
They've nearly completed the reverse sweep, and Crown was still on the road to Worlds. Game 5 looked rather familiar, with Afreeca drafting the Kog'Maw Lulu composition, which happily won them the first game. Crown yet again sacrifices for his team and locks in Galio. This pick is more so to take away from Afreeca, as they've already drafted the Jarvan, which pairs with the Galio really well. Samsung start off strong with a 4-man bot dive, securing 2 kills. They continue to play the map well, taking towers and dragons until they accumulate a 7,000 gold lead at 26 minutes, allowing them to take the Baron uncontested. Throughout the game, Samsung's top laner Cuvée has relentlessly pressured the top lane. He's only managed to secure 1 kill, but he's taken so many towers and a huge CS lead. The map has been perfectly set up for one final push at 30 minutes, where Samsung win a team fight and the game, closing out the series and qualifying for the finals versus KT Rolster.
Come in, Ingo Spirit, there's the shockwave, but flashes everywhere, and no one is going to be hit by that ultimate. Ruler takes down the Jarvan, Ambition dives the backline and picks up more. You can see the Nexus turrets, they're getting shredded, and who cares about the Kog'Maw when the base is getting ripped apart? The ace comes in anyway, and Samsung Galaxy complete the reverse sweep and will once again meet KT for World Championship opportunities on both sides.
I wish this game was more climactic, but Samsung played it perfectly. This series was about the team learning their place in the meta, with Crown putting up a varying display of his usual currently inconsistent carry champions, as well as a few integral supportive picks. They would need this diverse playstyle if they wanted to beat KT Rolster for the final world spot. Crown has lost the last 3 series against KT, and if it weren't for Samsung being last year's Worlds finalists, everyone would have written them off. This KT roster was built to contend on the international stage, and perhaps even win the whole tournament. Crown and Samsung were not the favourites here, especially with how they've been playing recently, so they would need to surprise everyone. In Game 1, the team trusts their mid laner and Crown locks in Syndra. This is an absolute marathon of a game, and the leads each team are able to hold onto are marginal. Several back and forths between dragons, tower dives, inhibitors being taken, and barons leads to the inevitable. This game is going to come down to one final fight. At a 59-minute Baron fight, Crown reminds everyone of why he was the spring MVP.
On a pawn, but will not have the last bounce. Now they're going back for the body slam coming through. He's going to get popped, but that's going to be a double kill going over to Crown, ripping them apart. Depth still alive, but he's going to fall right at the last second. And now Smeb will go down all on his lonesome. Just the 1 kill from KT over onto Samsung. That is going to be the ace complete, and that is going to be the game.
This might be an AD carry meta, but in the end, this game comes down to Crown's monstrous Syndra. The Game 2 draft is heavily in the favour of Samsung, with Janna and Crown's Talia basically countering the enemy composition. Both of these champions are great at denying engages and control the enemy movement. Samsung dominate Game 2, taking 11 towers to KT's 1.
We're watching the fight on the other side, 4v4.
Pushes him away, Ruler jumping away from the grand entrance, goes in, finds one, almost finds the other, and that is just going to be the ace as Smeb is locked away. Maybe they don't even bother killing him. A mercy showing just to leave him on the rift as the Nexus crumbles, and Samsung Galaxy stomp KT Rolster 33 minutes and now are 2-0 in this best of 5 series. One more win and they are going to World.
To basically everyone's surprise, Samsung are 1 win away from sweeping KT Rolster and claiming their ticket to the 2017 World Championship. And what's even more, Crown is playing well, and he's doing it on carry champions. All Samsung need to do is close out this series and avoid the reverse sweep. For 30 odd minutes, the game is slowly going in KT's favour, with things going south at a 32-minute fight where Samsung lose 2 and concede an inhibitor.
It's that slam together in the meantime, as you say, Ruler has fallen. Smeb just picking up the kill, and they'll go ahead and finish off Ambition.
After another horrendous 34-minute teamfight where Samsung are completely split up and forced to walk through the fog of war, they lose another inhibitor.
Samsung have the head for the hills, but the Cataclysm has them locked in. Kidnap from the Let's Bounce, draws them to the side, but it's mostly used for Ambition. They're trying to make it out of the fight, but over the wall comes multiple members of KT trying to take this fight, trying to knock down the tankier members of
A few minutes after this, KT group bot lane and push for the final one. They concede a kill on the dive, but successfully take the last tower and destroy the third inhibitor. Samsung's base is in ruins. They basically have to turtle and wait for the inhibitors to respawn before they can leave their base. This is awful timing as Baron is up and Elder Dragon spawns in 1 minute. A creative call sees Ruler and Core JJ sneak into the Baron pit and 2-man it. Ambition loses his life, but Samsung slow the game down by taking away one of KT roster's biggest tools to close out the game. At 41 minutes, we see KT storm into Samsung's base and try to go for the end. The two teams dance around the Nexus towers and the tension is unparalleled.
Only really Caitlyn that can auto-attack. Talia does not want to be looking for auto-attacks, more about zoning. That's why they're getting slow damage. Okay, isn't engaged.
Or JJ going in, gets the pop-up in on the score. Will be charming them with a quickness. You can see not a whole lot of damage being taken from the side of the Sejuani. Finally gets knocked down quite a bit, but the shielding will has to get himself out of there. Let's bounce. Not going to find anybody. Retreats back to the fountain. The turrets are still yet again under siege. Nature's Grasp going to lock down pretty much everybody, but no one is there to follow up. The shockwave will come down, takes Pawn rather low, but they haven't been able to finish him off yet. He successfully retreats to keep himself alive on the backside of the fight. This buys a little bit of breathing room for Samsung.
After a solid minute of fighting, no one dies, and Samsung live to fight another day. At this point, having 3 inhibitors down isn't the worst thing, as everyone is able to farm the super minions, which gives over a lot of gold. Crown and Ruler are able to get full builds, increasing their chances of winning a teamfight. KT tried to crack the base again at 45 minutes, resulting in a nail-biter of a teamfight.
Off these auto attacks and onto Ambition in the meantime. Now Smeb flag and drag goes through, finds the lockdown onto Crown, tries to get the pop onto the Orion as the Cataclysm comes in. He's got the flash, but just holds on to it. Instead, we'll just go ahead and pop the GA up the J4. Now Cube going in, first kill comes through his Ruler, gets rid of Mod on the TP, keeping the Zac alive, but that headshot crit will take him down, but it's 2 members dead. As you say, Smeb will fall, and
Samsung barely win it, with Crown playing exceptionally well. But because their base is still in shambles, KT are able to secure a Baron, which is only going to make their next assault even harder to defend against. KT try for a 3rd time, but only manage to destroy one of the respawn inhibitors. Pawn Split pushes top lane and takes another one, but loses his life to Crown, opening up the Elder Dragon for Samsung to take. At this point, Samsung have only destroyed 2 towers and not a single inner tower, meaning that they're a very long way from winning the game for themselves. They need to fully ace KT roster if they were going to go for the end. With yet another Baron on their side, KT go for one last attempt at 54 minutes into the game. With how tanky everyone is, and shielding and heals from the support items, both teams really struggle to find any kills. But when it looks like Cuvier might die, Crown and Samsung come to his rescue.
Rolling through, but Ruler and Crown need to be delivering the damage to try to turn this fight around. The shockwave still has not been used. Cube still in the fight, somehow has not died, despite just sitting in front for so very long. Cataclysm into the ace in the hole. The shockwave gets thrown down. They find a kill in onto Smeb, the first one to fall.
They kill Smeb. All that for one kill. The game was not over yet. Any gold lead at this point is meaningless. The towers taken don't matter. Samsung's base is fully recovered, and all that's left is one major team fight. The winner will win the game, and for Samsung, they'd win the series and go to Worlds. At 57 minutes and 40 seconds in the mid lane, it all unfolds.
Fisher not going to find the lockdown. Crown has the Banshee's Veil. It's going to be an all-out brawl. Smeb goes in rather deep, but he is just going to get popped. Core JJ finds the fight. Double delivery coming through, and that might just be it. Ruler finds the kill. Mada's going to go down. 3 members dead. Samsung pushing in, now looking for Pawn. Not going to get the knock up, but he is still all on his lonesome in the mid lane. Score tries to poke in from the sidelines, but they have him. Ruler finds the kill. 13 to 13. Samsung are going to knock down the turret here.
It's available here. KT is too long.
I can't believe believe it. They've actually done it. They're gonna knock down the turrets. Samsung Galaxy will beat KT Rolster. A 3-0 victory is scored. Does his damnedest to stop it, but there's just no avail. He will fail. The Nexus will crumble, and Samsung Galaxy are going to Worlds alongside SK Telecom and Longshu Gaming.
The game is over. Samsung sweep KT Rolster and complete the regional gauntlet. Crown is going to Worlds 2 years running. Despite having a mediocre summer, Crown is back to where he always aimed to be, on the world stage. He didn't make it to Worlds by being the outright best mid laner in Korea. Instead, he took the hard road, the road that would see him prematurely fall out of playoffs twice and crash his mental health. But he showed true grit. He showed he could get back up and keep pushing, even though he wasn't able to be the best he could be. He might not be the superstar carry he was a year ago, but he certainly still had the same goal, to win the World Championship and be recognized for his efforts. In the post-game interview, Crown gives us a beautiful insight.
And a lot of people, you know, on and off the game, they always compliment on your hard work that you always show, regardless of the situation.
그런 질문하시니까 올 것 같아요. 노력을 생각해보면서 어때요? 솔직히 썸머 시즌은 나름 열심히 한다고 했는데.
You know, I thought I worked hard enough during the summer split, but sometimes the results didn't come as I had practiced. But I think I wants to give a little appreciation to Ambition. But you know, ever since finishing up every single split, you know, I always tell my teammates and also myself to let's work harder than we are right now. But you know, sometimes when things don't go your way, but even in those times when your teammates can back you up and really make you a better player, it's just a wonderful blessing that I have in this team.
In the lead up to Worlds 2017, Riot released 2 promotional media pieces that involved Crown. Firstly, the top 20 players list would place Crown at 13th. Despite being substantially worse this year going into Worlds, Crown is placed way higher than last year. I think a part of this is due to his last year's performance, giving Crown his due. Deficio still backs him, which is nice to see, especially since he had a pretty decent showing in the recent regional finals. He says, Crown was well regarded as the second best mid laner in the world after 2016. A great 2017 spring split led into a summer split plagued by inconsistency, dropping him below the more consistent BDD. However, Crown has the work ethic and the attitude to bounce back and once again challenge Faker for the throne. Deficio's analysis of Crown's 2017 performance really showcases the high standards we have for what it means to be a good or exceptional player in professional league. Consistency is king, and names like Faker exemplify this. Crown might not have been consistent this year, but he still made it to Worlds despite those struggles of inconsistency. The sheer fact he's here proves that he's a player worthy of being on the world stage, especially when the competition in his own region was ridiculously high. Again, we take this list with a grain of salt, as ranking players against each other, especially across roles, isn't the best form of analysis due to lacking key context. Alongside the usual top 20 list, Riot produced a series of player profile pieces called Chase Your Legend. 3 short motivational videos on 3 players, Doublelift, Xiaohu, and Crown. Crown's video is probably my favourite media piece from Riot ever. It follows the story of Samsung's failings at Worlds 2016 and how Crown specifically dealt with his shortcomings. It's a beautiful insight into Minho's mind. We learn that he has this almost mystified idea of what it means to be a top player and to win, that the champion has to reach a level of hard work that is akin to enlightenment, and that when you do eventually win, you'll feel ecstasy because of the journey. He puts a lot of emphasis on winning Worlds, and there's this somber tone throughout the video until we finally see Crown living his dream. The video really makes you root for him. After all, he's just a man with a childlike dream. And unlike children's stories where dreams are often given or bestowed like wishes, Crown lives in reality where he has to work incredibly hard. He exemplifies that hard work. The film ends, as all of these Chase Your Legend videos do, with a single word: resilience. I think this perfectly sums up Minho's career. He works hard, fails, and then works even harder. If you can't do it, practice. Samsung Galaxy are placed in Group C with Europe's #1 seed G2 Esports and play-ins team 1907 Fenerbahce, as well as familiar face Royal Never Give Up. This was a reasonably difficult group, with G2 expected to perform well after their decent MSI showing earlier in the year. With the meta shifted towards Ardent Sensor and AD carries, Raw Never Give Up was also expected to go far in the tournament, as their ADC Uzi was considered one of, if not the best in the world. Once again, Samsung would play every team twice, and the top 2 teams from the group would advance to the quarterfinals. One single loss against a weaker team here might spell disaster for their chances. Crown opens against G2 Esports with an absolute banger of a game. He plays Talia to an excellent level, putting up a perfect KDA and carrying teamfights. He uses his ult to cut off members of G2 to give Samsung the numbers advantage. They win relatively easily. Crown is looking good, perhaps he's out of his slump. Samsung's main competition in this group is China's RNG with their strong teamfighting skills and aggression. If Samsung wanted to finish first in the group, to get a better matchup in the quarterfinals, they'd probably need to beat RNG at least once. However, Worlds was in China this year and the Chinese team stepped up. RNG win both their games against Samsung, but Crown actually played okay. In the first game he was on Rise and had a few decent side lane plays where he escaped narrowly from RNG collapsing on him. In game 2, his Syndra was the only real threat on the Samsung side, with Ruler playing poorly in both games. With these losses, Samsung looked to be the weakest Korean team, at least from the group stage games. Longzhu Gaming went 6 wins and 0 losses, and SKT only lost 1 game, but also showed that they could make insane comebacks against strong teams like their 10k gold deficit versus China's #1 seed Edward Gaming. It was looking like SKT still had that it factor that won them so many titles before. With the Chinese teams stepping up, it seems that Samsung weren't the only teams to have improved since last Worlds. The competition was clearly better. That being said, Samsung win the rest of their games, but show signs of struggling against the wildcard team 1907 Fenerbahce. But in reality, Haru had subbed in and was playing the experimental Ezreal jungle. Crown still had an awful appearance, being completely outshone by the enemy mid laner, Frozen. His inconsistencies were still showing. However, this struggle of a win was rectified in their second game where Samsung stomped them.
약한 점을 다 보여줬다는 것은 반대로는 이제 강한 점은 안 보여줬다.
Samsung finished the group stage as the second seed, going 4 wins and 2 losses. This could cause slight issues for them, as they're more likely to draw one of the top Korean teams in the quarterfinals, and that's exactly what happens. Samsung Galaxy have the hardest draw of any team in the tournament, the #1 team from Korea, Longzhu Gaming. On top of this, they were also on the opposite side of the bracket to Raw Never Give Up, the team that just beat them twice, and SKT T1, the team that has won every World Championship they've ever attended. So on the off chance that Crown beats Longzhu and their semi-final opponent, eventually making it to the finals, they'd then have to play another tournament favourite. This year was not the same as last Worlds, where they only had to beat 2 Western teams to make it to the final. If they do miraculously make it, it would be on the terms that they were one of the best teams in the world, not due to a lucky draw. And with Crown still playing inconsistently, not having fully recovered from his slump, this was going to be a real challenge. Longzhu Gaming were a bit of an anomaly as they had a pretty poor spring split, but then sub 3 players in going into summer, all of which were young, hyped up players with limited experience. They proceeded to dominate LCK Summer and won it all. Going into Worlds, 4 of the 5 Longzhu players were in the top 6 spots on the top 20 players list. People had extremely high hopes for this team, and their undefeated group stage performance only furthered these expectations. They were the true Goliaths, and their mid laner BDD was perhaps the current best in the world. With everyone on the analyst desk predicting a Longzhu victory, Game 1 would begin. BDD is playing Syndra, an extreme lane bully with the ability to go for level 6 all-ins. Crown is on Malzahar, a champion that can shove waves quickly and quite safely due to his passive giving him a spell shield. The Malzahar pick is meant to provide guaranteed CC, so his team can lay the engage in teamfights. However, it has a pretty awful time in lane versus Syndra.
So Crown will be allowed to lane, but he is down far. Oh, I take it back! One more auto would have killed him, but he didn't have the windup available. BDD gonna force Crown out of lane.
There was a laundry list of things for Samsung to realistically be able to stake a claim against Longzhu, and Crown stepping up, returning to his spring levels, was something we were looking for and already getting heavily pressured.
BDD bullies Crown off of the wave multiple times and even solo kills him at 6 minutes.
Playing very defensively, even when his laners are doing good. Certainly not going to say that with the mid lane.
Flashes in, go! He knew the damage. BDD gets
Crown is looking nervous, but as long as he doesn't concede too heavily, Samsung have a really strong late game teamfight comp with Kennen, Sejuani, and Rakan all lending to long CC chains. Longzhu also haven't drafted a single ardent sensor user, instead opting for the fresh support to help their immobile carries in Xayah and Syndra. Longzhu tried to extend BDD's lead with another kill attempt on Crown. Cuz ganks, but this time Crown calls on Ambition to cover his lane, and they narrowly kill BDD. The game goes quite evenly with a few very close teamfights where both teams lose minimal members. However, Longzhu have been able to pick up 2 Infernal Dragons, giving them a slight advantage for when the Elder Dragon spawns. At 26 minutes, we can see how obnoxious Samsung's comp is with their long CC chains. Rakan charms and knocks up Jarvan, with Crown following up with his ultimate, securing the kill. A few minutes later, a mid lane fight breaks out. Ambition dies in the initial engage, but nothing else happens until BDD catches Crown with a max range stun. BDD flashes forward into 4 and kills Crown but dies in return. Ruler uses his rocket jump resets to kill the enemy ADC. Samsung win the fight and take Baron. BDD here makes a huge misplay, tunnel visioning onto Crown but completely losing the fight because of it. This play propels Samsung into a gold lead. It doesn't last long, with Samsung losing a fight at the top tier 2. Crown is split from his team and Core JJ gets caught. Samsung failed to layer their crowd control effectively and Longzhu wins the fight quite convincingly. The game is back to an even state. At 38 minutes, Longzhu see Cuvée showing in the bot lane and start the Baron. This is a daring 4v5 and without their Kennen engage, Samsung are taking a big risk here by contesting the Baron. Longzhu quickly turn off the Baron and engage onto Crown. He flashes away, giving the rest of Samsung the space to re-engage themselves.
Longzhu knew they had to force something here in the teleport cooldown, but Samsung 4 versus 5 find the kill themselves.
Samsung take 2 kills, with Crown's Malzahar really showing its value, being able to just CC anyone who tries to jump on him. Samsung take the Baron and shortly after close out the game. They've just beat the tournament favourites in game 1. The Malzahar pick is clearly really strong and fits Samsung's playstyle perfectly. Whatever inconsistencies Crown had were basically nullified by this Malzahar pick. Longzhu realised this and banned it for the rest of the series. Crown takes Talia partly to deny BDD, who has been really good on the pick, but also because Crown has also had quite strong performances too. Samsung draft a double global team comp in the hopes to create a numbers advantage across the map with Shen and Talia ultimates. BDD starts game 2 by taking an early lead in lane. Cuz ganks at 4 minutes, and despite Ambition being there to cover, Crown still dies. This would be his only death the entire game, however, as he pilots the Talia exceptionally.
The last play was around mid lane, and Crown didn't have to use his ultimate to get there. Now they're definitely outnumbered.
Be 2 kills, they cut him off properly. Here comes the wall, there's nowhere for Longzhu to go. Ulti pop as well. They're going to be durable for this one. 1 kill, make it a second one. The barrier pop means nothing, and the second kill comes in. 2 for 0 in the bottom.
At 10 minutes, Crown has 100% kill participation, even picking up 2 kills for himself. At 16 minutes, it looks like Ruler has been caught, but due to Samsung's globals, they're able to collapse on Longzhu way faster than they were prepared for. Crown isolates BDD with his wall and they win the fight. A few minutes later, Crown yet again uses his wall to cut off BDD from entering a fight a dragon. This gives his team a huge advantage and they happily take 5 kills, with Crown securing a quadra kill. This is prime Crown peeking through. Whatever doubts the fans and analysts had about BDD dominating Crown like he had done in LCK Summer were shut down. With a 7,000 gold lead, Samsung start the Baron at 25 minutes into the game. Longzhu tried to contest and Crown walls off their exit, allowing the rest of his team to collapse. They win the fight and take the Baron. The game is as good as done. It's a 30-minute stomp and Crown ends with 9 kills and 6 assists, making it 100% kill participation. Minho is back and it couldn't have come at a better time. Samsung Galaxy are match point against the tournament favourites.
Doesn't matter. 2 versus 5. Samsung Galaxy will not be stopped. Crown, perfect kill participation. A sub 30-minute game 2 win for Samsung Galaxy.
Game 3's draft starts off posing a problem for Samsung as they give over the Talia to BDD. This is a huge power pick in the meta, as we just saw last game with Crown's dominating performance. Usually, Crown would advocate the Malzahar response here, but Longzhu have banned it. Whatever Crown chooses to play here is going to be vital. It has to be able to either match the Talia's roaming ability or neutralize her in lane. They lock in Lissandra last pick, a champion with no play at Worlds and very limited play during the summer split. Niche picks like this have become Samsung's bread and butter ever since that Fable Skarner pick all those games ago. Lissandra has equally as strong wave clear as Talia, and can move around the map with her E ability quite effectively. It also adds to the strong engage of Ambition's Sejuani. This game is much slower than the previous two, and around 11 minutes we can see Crown push in the wave and begin to roam bot side. Crown and Ambition, instead of threatening the dive bot, decide to clear the vision in the jungle and set up a blind zone for Longzhu. With this vision setup, Cuz gets caught out and Crown gets first blood. Samsung are able to climb to a 4,000 gold lead at 25 minutes when a fight breaks out in the mid lane. They win and take the Baron. Longzhu try to fight back and take some skirmishes, but they're so far behind that they really can't capitalize. At 32 minutes, Crown lands a gross engage on Longzhu's backline, sealing the game as a win for Samsung.
Samsung Galaxy defying expectations. 3-0 was a likely result, but not in the way you expect here. And there is nothing left to stop Samsung Galaxy as they take down their first opponent. They are the first in the semifinals, and who can really stop this team?
Series KT was able to do that, but they won the title in unexpected fashion over SKT. They make it here on such a run of form, but Samsung did have...
They've just dominated the pre-tournament favourites, and Crown outperformed BDD all series, and he's given the Player of the Series award.
And while the entirety of Samsung stepped up to earn their spot in Shanghai, we'd like to recognize one player who was crucial in finding that series win. So Player of the Series is being awarded to Crown.
This quarter-final matchup really showcased how well of a meta read Samsung had. They had strong counterpicks to the meta mid lane pool and were able to make use of the strong global ults like Shen and Talia. Crown played 3 different champions here, and despite one shaky early game on the Malzahar, he performed like a world-class player. And like always, Deficio agrees.
The fact he's bouncing back now for Worlds is so important because he can be and he will be one of the best mid laners in the world. Yeah, he's the kind of player who can always find 1 or 2 mistakes, being like, that could have been slightly better. I mean, he had such a great game, and he... one of the main reasons they actually get this 3-0. He should be super proud.
Okay, finally, maybe you're always very careful in talking, but are you at least a bit proud of what you showed today? Because you had a monster performance, Crown.
게임 전체적인 부분에서는 괜찮은 플레이를 좀 했다고 생각은 하는데 그래도 이제 뭐 1대1 상황이나 2대2 상황이나 이런 부분에선 실수가 많았기 때문에 뭐 좀 자신감 부분은 그런 부분은 좀 떨어지는 것 같아요. 네, 이런 부분 인터뷰에서는. 네.
All right, always humble but always performing. Thank you very much, Crown. Congratulations, and back over to you guys.
With their win against Longzhu Gaming, Samsung proved they are capable of winning the whole tournament and advanced to the semi-finals where they'll play China's Team WE. Team WE were a Chinese legacy team with a long history, but they hadn't been to an international event for many years. This year, however, they won the spring split and had an okay summer, with their ADC Mystic and jungler Condi being a particular highlight. They played very standard League of Legends and were quite akin to the Korean style of play, but with Worlds in China this year, the crowd rallied their hometown team, and Crown must have felt the pressure. After all, SKT T1 had managed to win their semi-final matchup versus RNG, and were now waiting in the finals. Crown desperately wanted to be there, to get revenge and prove that he was a champion. This matchup was Samsung favoured, and all the casters predicted that they'd win, but that's exactly what they said about Longzhu too. After all, this is Worlds, and anything can happen. Game 1 seems like it would be the perfect draft for Samsung, They have the strong engage of Jarvan and Kennen, paired with the support of Taric, which they usually find a lot of success on. Crown even has his Talia. However, they give over the best bot lane in the tournament in Xayah and Rakan, and also the Shen, which can be game breaking if used correctly. Team WE also draft a surprise in the mid lane with Kassadin. If this Kassadin gets to the late game, it will be a huge issue with the Shen. This game goes, to put it lightly, poorly for Samsung. Cuvée gets killed on the side lane 4 times, and WE never gives Samsung the chance to fight. WE catch multiple members of Samsung too many times before they're just too far ahead. The game is over in 27 minutes, and Samsung will need to focus up in the next game as they look really disconnected in the first. Samsung fight back in game 2, where Crown plays Malzahar to counter WE's Galio. This game comes down to smart map movements and side lane pressure from Cuvée's Gnar, where Samsung are able to get multiple towers before 20 minutes and accumulate a 5,000 gold lead. WE have a really strong wombo combo teamfight comp, so it's important that Samsung find a way to neutralize at least one of those factors. In a fight at 25 minutes, it looks like WE are going to pull it off.
Last game of group stage, they had a fed Camille who could 1v1 rumble. And it's
JJ, there we go. It's Condi as well as the backup. The taunt comes down, but they haven't got the kills. The healing is so good. Look at the suppression down into Mystic. He's going to get shut down. Cosmic Radiance keeps him alive. There's still not enough follow-up damage. Somehow, WE are unable to find anything. Cuvée saves the day, and Rula turns it around.
As soon as WE's ADC shows himself, Crown locks him down with his ultimate, killing him and winning the fight. Samsung get Baron and push for one final fight, winning the game.
Sticks around on the front line. Crown is bouncing the Malefic Visions from target to target, and Cuvée gets himself a double kill. The Nexus is focused down, and Samsung Galaxy even the series 1-1.
Crown and Samsung are now playing to their pace and look much more comfortable. The dream of the rematch against SKT in the finals seems more and more likely. Game 3 is vintage Samsung Galaxy. For the first 20 minutes, not a single kill was taken, and Samsung are able to take 2 towers and a dragon by just playing the map better than their opponent. Despite this, they haven't actually acquired a gold lead until Ambition initiates a dive at the mid tower. Unlike game 1, Crown has an excellent showing on his Talia. Samsung win a fight at 23 minutes with Crown picking up 2 kills and doing 5,000 damage.
Samsung get because they need to have a lot. They need to play around this Baron unless W can get the fight.
Body slam was interrupted there. Condi still got Cataclysm available, but look at the Radiance. That's going to buy so much time. Now it's a 5v4. Good shockwave in reply. 957 gets the feast out. It's a 1-for-1 jungler for support. Cuvée gets a taunt up, knocked back, and Shie's dropped down. His flash means nothing. Samsung Galaxy are running away with this fight as they're trying to run Ben and Mystic down.
Samsung secure the Baron buff for themselves and make a small dent in WE's base. They rinse and repeat this again, winning a fight, taking Baron and destroying a tower or 2. It's a slow and painful death for WE, with Samsung accumulating a 17,000 gold lead before closing the game and securing match point.
And Samsung Galaxy are 1 win away from a rematch in the finals with SKT.
And that game was just pure, unadulterated domination by Samsung right here.
Samsung clearly didn't want to bore the crowd with another slow game and decided to lock in Lee Sin for Ambition, pairing it with Crown's Galio. They go for an early 3-minute skirmish and kill WE's mid laner.
Alright, that's a flash taunt coming in from Crown. Flash away from Xie. He dodges the Sonic Wave, but Samsung are not yet done. Flash forward, flash in. That's a 2-man knockup. Xie and Condi are in trouble. Condi's getting good damage down onto Ambition. The resonating strike connects. Winds of War tags. First blood picked up by Core JJ.
Crown follows Ambition again for a dive in the top lane, which ultimately fails and WE get 3 kills.
Level 5s are coming in. Flash away, gets the stun down and the knockup. 957 turns that around. Now into 2v2. The knockback from the seismic shove, and Shanghai erupts in noise. The Justice Punch is interrupted, and Condi gets another one.
Samsung keep trying to make the early skirmishes work, and yet again concede a kill. WE are being spoon-fed advantages by Samsung here, but they fail to capitalize. Samsung punish them and show off their beautiful team fighting at 13 minutes.
The quickness, the 3-man knockup into the hero's entrance. Look Look at the knockup and the damage down. 957 over the slicing maelstrom is doing what he can to turn it around. It's too little, it's too late, and he's down. Crown gets another. Ruler got the first, and Ben will get hyper killed by QV's knock.
Samsung slows the game down after this and falls back into their usual play where they take 2 towers and a dragon before starting Baron at 25 minutes. This is a true 50-50, and Crown realizes that he might have to sacrifice himself to make the chances higher. He flashes over the wall and taunts the enemy jungler so he can't smite the Baron. He loses his life, but Samsung get out with a Baron buff. From here, it's standard Korean dominance, and Samsung just whittled WE down until one last fight at 31 minutes.
Crown charges up the Duran shield, doesn't fire the trigger. QV's about to get excited. Here comes 957 from behind. That's a dunk down. The Cosmic Radiance is buying some time. Ruler flashes and heals to safety. He gets one. Lador into the wall. Triple kill. Picked up for Ruler. Ben's flashed away to safety. Now she aced the target. Ruler not gonna find the quadra kill as Crown takes him down. And Shanghai is silenced. And Samsung Galaxy set their sights on the Summoners Cup. They take down Team WE and qualify for a rematch with SK Telecom in the championship finals.
Clinical is the word, Jad. Clinical is the word to describe Samsung Galaxy.
Minho is victorious, and he can see the light at the end. The feeling of winning it all is so close, but in that light is a figure, a man whose shadow casts over him. Faker sits atop his throne, waiting for Crown to challenge him. This world is known as the Worlds, where Faker 1v9'd and dragged his team to the finals. Even though his team hasn't looked as dominant as previous years, this is still Faker's Worlds. He owns this tournament. No one has, and perhaps ever will, eclipse him. Crown was so close the year before, but failed, like everyone else. But this year was different.
누구든 이길 수 있죠. 근데 그게 너무 힘들어서 다들 못 이기는 거지. 불사 막 이런 건 아닌 것 같고.
During the semi-final post-game press conference, Crown answers a question regarding the pressure he must be feeling playing against SKT and Faker again.
How does it feel to get a second chance to lift the trophy, and what are your thoughts going against Faker into the final? Thank you.
네, 작년에 결승 진출했을 때는 이제 페이커 선수랑 한다고 했을 때는 엄청 긴장도 많이 되고 꼭 이겨야겠다 싶기도 했었는데 지금 와서는 지금 당장에 제 자신에게 뭐 한다면은 지금 당장 느낌은 그냥 별로 그런 긴장감도 없고 그냥 무조건 이기고 싶다 약간 그런 마음가짐도 아니에요. 이기고 싶어요. 근데 지금 당장에는 그냥 제가 최선을 다하고 경기에 이제 후회 없이 즐길 수 있으면은 그걸로 만족하는 것 같습니다. 네.
Crown no longer feels like it's him versus Faker, but rather that in order to win he just needs to play well. He doesn't need the best Faker on an individual level.
Up against Faker. We've already kind of teased that, the fact that in 2016 it was all about whether or not Crown can beat Faker, can rise above him. But it seems like it's a different matchup, a different objective this time around, Azale.
Yeah, you can't stop him. You can only hope to contain him. And I think that's going to be the assignment here for Crown. He really just needs to pick intelligently, to play to follow Faker around the map, try to match what he does, push him in, these sorts of things. You can't let Faker do what he wants to do because he will take over the game.
And I think for Crown, he has a good mindset coming into this year's Worlds, better than what he had last year when he was thinking he was going to have to be the Faker killer. No, he just has to allow his team to be the Faker killer. Match whatever you can in the mid lane and just relax.
His team are honestly looking really good going into the finals. Samsung Galaxy and these 5 players specifically have always embodied the phrase the sum of the parts is greater than the whole. As individual players, they're all criminally underrated, constantly being overshadowed by players from SKT, Longzhu Gaming, and KT Rolster. But as a team, they're constantly doing the impossible. They swept KT to make it to Worlds, they swept Longzhu to make it to the finals, and now all that stands in their way is SKT T1. As a team, Samsung have a chance. If they all play to their strengths, they could dismantle the SKT dynasty. Before the game, the analyst desk gives their predictions. 2 out of 3 believe SKT will win. Professional League of Legends is at a point where no one wants to doubt this great organisation. They've been blessed with 3 long years of domination, and the fans and analysts couldn't see a world where SKT and Faker aren't winning the World Championship. But there's one analyst who thinks Samsung Galaxy and Crown can actually do it. And back in 2017, that's all I needed to hear. A year ago, I watched as my team won that pivotal Game 3 of the finals. They gave me hope, but in the end, they failed to cross the finish line. It doesn't matter that they pushed SKT to 5 games, as they eventually lost. SKT was still undefeated at Worlds, and that's all anyone remembered or cared about. But something truly felt different about this year. SKT looked like they could bleed, they looked vulnerable. I could feel a change coming, and Crown would be leading it.
LCK 春季赛 MVP 强力中单 Crown。
Game 1 of the Grand Finals saw Crown on Malzahar, a champion that he had found so much success on that both Longzhu and WE banned it after losing to it just once. But SKT and Faker clearly thought they had an answer to it. Faker locks in the hyper carry Cassiopeia. The matchup goes as expected. Crown just clears waves and avoids interacting with Faker as much as he can. His team are getting huge advantages across the map, taking 4 towers, 2 mountain dragons, and the Rift Herald all before the first kill of the game. Samsung have managed to get a 3000 gold lead from excellent map movement alone. Their macro play is undeniably the best in the world, and it gives them the space to sub the Baron at 23 minutes. This might seem rushed by Samsung, but the assumed 50-50 chance that SKT's jungler steals the Baron is significantly lower than you might expect. Crown's Malzahar can instantly suppress the Gragas when he comes into the pit, stopping him from smiting. All Samsung have to do is burst the Baron down whilst Peanut is suppressed. But this is SKT, and the favour is always on their side.
Back again, going for the flank. Can he get himself in? He's suppressed. The burst damage. Oh, this play was too early. Peanut with the game-saving Baron steal. And here comes the re-engage. He bounces back. First blood still goes to Samsung Galaxy. Huni TP's in, but it's 5v4. Huni doesn't have a lot of places to go. Faker likely to lose his life. The flank from AD Cannon. They've got 2, now make it 3 as Bang is forced to run away. He's chased down. He's silenced and dead. Huni can try to Baron recall out. They can't see him. But 4-0 to Samsung Galaxy.
I'm not sure if it's miscommunication or what, but Samsung tunnel vision on killing Gragas instead of just finishing the Baron. Peanut smites and steals the objective. SKT have the buff, but Samsung still have a large gold lead and press for the fight. Samsung secure 4 kills, cancelling out the lost Baron. They use this lead to slowly suffocate SKT, taking more towers and dragons until a final 36-minute push.
Safe enough. Kites away from Faker. Good damage here. Gets the knockup. A bit of healing as well. The barrier pop of Faker. Almost gets himself the solo kill. Now forced to run away, but Knights forward. Gets away from the knockup. Gets rooted in and Crown gets himself that kill in the mid lane. 5-0 in the game. Domination to this one. They're looking for a couple more kills to pad the stats, but there is no way back to this one for SKT. The slicing Maelstrom in there. 7-0 in the game. 2 more to go. Samsung Galaxy strike down SKT in the first.
Almost a perfect game opener from Samsung Galaxy.
Samsung win game 1 without even conceding a single kill. In fact, if it weren't for the 1 tower in bot lane and Baron still, Samsung would have perfect gamed SKT in the opening game. This is completely unheard of. SKT are truly on the ropes and Crown is just comfortably playing the game. He doesn't look shaken as he has done earlier in the tournament. He seems relaxed and Samsung look confident they can win the series. Game 2 puts the pressure on SKT, and they pick the surprise Yasuo for their top laner. Crown locks in Malzahar again, and likes his odds. He has a 100% win rate on this champion so far, and it doesn't look like there's a good answer in the current meta. With most of the strong global champions banned, Faker decides to play Ryze, a champion that should be able to outroam the Malzahar, and get leads in the side lanes. The trio of Gragas, Yasuo and Ryze possess a dangerous skirmish advantage for the side of SKT. They can CC chain just about anyone, and offer enough damage to kill even the tankier champions of Samsung's comp. And this is exactly what happens. The trio dive Crown at 8 minutes, killing him and putting him 20 CS behind.
Let's see what happens here. Using Huni to the mid lane as well, looking for a pick out of that with a knock of the chains of crowd control. Landed beautifully, first blood comes in for SKT.
After a close fight of 15 minutes, no one dies, but SKT have the health advantage, allowing them to take the first dragon. Things are already looking better for SKT. Faker continues to press the lead, using his ultimate to collapse on Cuvée in the top lane, securing yet another kill for his team. SKT have woken up. The team that is undefeated at Worlds is finally showing through the cracks. This is exactly why SKT were still predicted to win it all. They just had that it factor that meant they were never counted out. At 18 minutes, another of Faker's realm warps are used to initiate a pick onto Ambition. The mobility is truly overtaking the game, but SKT's ADC, Bang, flashes forwards and becomes split from his team. Samsung capitalize on this crucial positioning mistake and kill him.
And he does not have a way out for this one. The flash was already used. Barrier pop for some time. In comes Crown. And
they're going to find their first kill of the game. Kube staying alive as well. The chase forward. They got the root into Faker. Samsung Galaxy. The flash tornado. Core JJ secures a double kill for Ruler.
They chase the stragglers and also kill Faker. The game is suddenly even again. After a 21-minute dragon fight, Samsung Galaxy decide even is not enough, and pull off this beautiful team fight.
Samsung not in position to fight. Slam explosive cast does not do much, though the ults are down. Here comes the re-engage once again for Ambition. Wants to add the damage. Look at the blade, Colorado Ruler. Do they have the triple knockup? The follow-through for Cube. And he's going to fight for help, but still one death comes through. The suppression comes in. 4 kills already. One man stands alive, and he's going to fall. The ace for Samsung Galaxy.
Crown wasn't even there until the very end. His team are just executing these fights perfectly, chain CCing and landing every single AoE ability to hit the maximum amount of targets. Samsung are playing like they're just on another plane of existence to SKT, and Crown isn't really having to do much. He's there to suppress key targets so his team can burst them down. It's also important to note that Malzahar typically forces the enemy carries to invest quite a bit of gold into an item called Quicksilver Sash, as this is the only way to cleanse the suppression from Malzahar ult. This has an indirect impact on the amount of damage Faker can put out in fights, as he has to buy a defensive item early rather than committing the gold to another damage item. So the Malzahar pick doesn't just nullify the laning phase, but it also lowers Faker's impact in team fights. It's a small margin, but Crown needs to take advantage of literally anything if he wants to beat SKT. With the game in their hands, Samsung push for the win at 33 minutes. They make it look easy.
Cannot be found. A few more attacks will knock down the inhibitor. The flash forward, looking for the play, not going to get anything for themselves. Goody blocks out a little bit. Here comes the Cataclysm, and it could be just that for SKT as they're forced to retreat the Realm Warp just to buy some time. The Quicksilver Sash gets rid of suppression, but it does mean the damage comes through to Nexus turrets left remaining as 1 kill has already come through. Samsung Galaxy hoping to knock down these bricks and build that foundation of greatness. Faker silence, the flash for the knockup, but no kill to come through just yet. The turrets fall, and the Nexus in front of their eyes as well, looking to snuff them out as another kill comes through. Kube transforms back, and Samsung Galaxy are 1 game away from greatness.
Crown is at the precipice. He's 1 win away from doing something no other team ever has. But this win isn't just about ending SKT's dynasty and getting revenge. Rather, it's about Crown's triumph through sheer effort. It's about that young boy's dream all those years ago when he wanted to be a Starcraft pro gamer. All Crown wanted to do was win a title, to get up on that stage and see the world recognize him, to be like his hero, Jaedong. In an interview with ESPN, Crown reminds us why he's still fighting. I think this is my last chance to finally fulfill my childhood dream to achieve that success as a professional gamer. So I'm definitely going to give all I have and leave no regrets. 1 final game and all this would come true. 1 final game and Crown would be a world champion. At this point, you'd think SKT's coaches would advocate for banning the Malzahar, as it clearly stops Faker from pushing any advantage in the lane, somewhere he outclasses Crown in. But for whatever reason, they just don't. For the 3rd time, Crown locks in the Malzahar, and Samsung cleverly banned Kassadin, a champion we've seen Samsung struggle against a few times this year. SKT respond with Leona, one of the very few non-Ardent Center champions to see any play. But because of this, Faker is forced onto the Karma as it's the only way they can fit Ardent Center into their comp. SKT last picked Trundle into Kuve's Cho'Gath. Trundle gives SKT a hugely advantageous top lane matchup, and it will be a problem throughout the game as he can pressure side lanes. SKT also substitute their main jungler out for Blank. This change mixes things up, and SKT get 2 successful ganks off in the early game, killing both Kuve and Crown.
Only has his flash to get out. Blank for the gank, can he make it happen? Level 2 on both these players, no pillar for Hooney, looks for the barrel slow, that's gonna be in there, and there's no way out. First blood comes through without even going for Crown. Gonna land the root, the flash, and chase in, they've got the crowd control, and another kill in the mid lane. SKT have wanted to fake.
At 10 minutes, SKT have huge pressure in the top lane, with Hooney's Trundle pressing onto the tier 2 tower. Ambition is looking to dive the bot lane, but SKT predict the play, and Faker and Blank are both hovering. They catch Ambition out in the jungle, forcing a fight.
And there's almost no way out, the heal comes in, and actually Wolf's gonna survive it, and it's a walk away now. Hooney is deep into the back line, gets the pillar, 1 more shot does him in, Hooney gets his kill into Ambition, and Core JJ's isolated, he's flashless, Leon's gonna do nothing but buy a few more seconds, as down he goes, the damage, not to be had.
SKT get 2 more kills and quickly rotate to kill Crown again.
There's Crown Crown with the flash to go over the wall. He's not going to choose to the there yet, but the root already landed. So that's going to be a body slam, and Faker with a second kill.
Samsung are really wanting to force a bot lane dive, trying to clear vision in the bot side jungle, but they fail to track SKT's jungler properly and blank engages on Crown. But this time Samsung are all close by and they manage to get a kill for themselves. Faker's then caught doing the same thing and Crown kills him too.
But here comes Ambition, 3 versus 1. They're going to get the stun of one more auto attack. And here comes Crown as well. Faker has flashed right into his waiting arms, and Crown says, I'll get you back for that one, the shield.
The game stays even for a few minutes, with Huni's Trundle constantly pressuring the side lanes. At 18 minutes, SKT go for a mid lane push with the Rift Herald, forcing Samsung to defend. A fight ensues and they go 1 for 1.
And we're going to see the setup. Now let's get a fight.
Ruler flashed away from 2 ultimates, the re-engage lands a stun and a blink. Can they get the damage up? But not just yet. The re-engage though. Ambition going to fall to Wolf's damage, but they trade back. They've actually knocked down Huni, the most fed member on the team this 4v4. Now looks good for Samsung.
2 minutes later, with the Baron now spawned, Samsung look to get river vision. SKT catch Ruler out, and despite all the shields, he actually goes down.
Crown is trying to enter teleport. Insung's going to land in the back lane. Can they knock down Ruler with this one? Half HP on a hit, knocked back into the wall once again. Huni's in the mix, and he got the first kill. One carry is down. The re-engage look for Crown. This Malzahar not long for the world. Has flash, doesn't matter. Double kill in for me.
This is a losing fight, and SKT get 3 kills and the Baron. The possibility of losing this third game and beginning the reverse sweep is very real. Crown was looking relaxed for the first 2 games, but now there's a chance it's not as easy as they all thought. This was SKT, and Faker was not going to tarnish his legacy so easily. With the Baron buff active, SKT produced a 7,000 gold lead. At 27 minutes, SKT catch Ruler out again. This fight sums up the meta perfectly. On both sides, targets are CC'd and damaged, but no one dies. Everyone is either too tanky or they're being supplemented by shields.
Then Huni is in, gets the ulti out of Malzahar, but staying alive. Then back in towards Crown. Then in Akube trying to trade tanks back and forth. But Huni going to stay alive. A big shield and a heal and a run back at SKT. No deaths on either side.
Everyone is so low though. Important here for SKT.
SKT initiate a re-engage, but lose their jungler under tower.
Bang on the 3 Adam spike. Looks like there we go! Explosive. No, just a flash in. There's no follow-up in it. It's almost going to be the kill. Yes, they knocked down and blanked the Rupture, all they needed. I don't know if he thought he had cast or what, but the body slam flash did nothing for SKT.
It's a small victory for the side of Samsung, but they use key summoner spells in the process and also lose the next dragon. SKT now have 4 Drakes and look like they will just outscale, especially with the split pushing Trundle. Ruler is caught out for a 3rd time at a 31-minute Baron attempt by SKT, but they fail to kill him. Crown lands a huge 4-man silence and Samsung win the fight before turning to the Baron.
He's gonna stay alive, another re-engage, a giant silence at Akube, and he blows up, bang! That's a 1 for 0, the chase-in is there, and they're gonna get rid of the bot lane entirely. There's no carries left for SKT. The chase to be had, Samsung Galaxy now in control of the river.
This time, if SKT's jungler tries to steal it, Crown is ready. In an eerily similar fashion, Gragas goes over the wall to attempt to steal, but Crown suppresses him immediately. Samsung don't make the same mistake and burst him down before letting the Baron get too low. With Baron by their side, they go for the final push, killing SKT's jungler and Faker.
CoreJJ, a run explosive cast also lands on nothing. The exchange back out of CoreJJ, nearly the kill, but look at that Nethergrass down, 8 to 9 in kills. So they get back part. They're gonna find the next one in the face check in for Faker, dies with flash up. 2 kills, 5v3.
They're on the enemy Nexus towers and it looks like Crown is about to complete the sweep. He's about to finish what he started exactly a year ago, but this is SKT.
Throughout the years, Kube getting low, the chase on a wolf. One more attack will do him and he stays alive. But one Nexus turret falls, it's just the one to stay in there. Huni on the front lines, bang to rejoin, clearing out the minions. The minions though still pushing in, the turret is gone. Ruler flashed away, he stays in, Wolf finds himself the first kill, but he's gonna trade his life. Huni and Blink are healing up on the Warmog, so a nice build up, and they get in, yes, they're gonna find the backline. Ambition gets the shield though, look to the Nethergrass, they will knock down Blink.
Faker's coming from behind now, full HP on this combat. He needs to stop SKT from losing.
The flash Q's not gonna find it, a kill though for Huni, can he keep SKT alive? Look for Ambition, one more attack, turns to Crown, yes, a double for Huni. The mid lane stays alive, now Faker in the melee range of Kube.
He just managed to defend. Eventually they kill QA as well and buy a bit more time, but there are no Nexus turrets.
Through miraculous teamfighting, SKT defend their base. The Elder Dragon spawns at a perfect time and they take it. With their 4 previous dragons, they're more than back in the game. SKT don't have enough time to finish, but they're able to slow the game down long enough for their inhibitor to respawn. In an attempt to get mid priority for the next Baron, SKT and Samsung gather in the mid lane to push the wave. It's a small margin of error, but Ruler sees the angle. Faker is ever so slightly out of position, being away from his front line and not having flash up. He gets ulted by Ruler and the rest is history.
Samsung Galaxy push mid first. As you can see, the flash ult flips. They've caught Faker. They've got the CC. The mid laner is down. The unkillable Demon King has done just alive. As Ruler stays in, life stealing. In the back line, they found more as Huni does not have a way out. Pops the ult, but he has no exit route. 2 more autos will kill him down, but he gets to run away. They twitch to their aggro. They knock down Wolf instead. The flash R that signals the end of the SKT dynasty. There are no turrets. It is 5 versus 3. Huni, do you have what it takes to win the game? Big certainly does not. Ruler on the Nexus. The upset is complete as the kills come through. The SKT dynasty is over. All hail the new kings. Samsung Galaxy, your 2017 World Champions!
Crown has done it. He's accomplished his goal of winning the World Championship. He's utterly given himself to his dream, sacrificing his physical and mental health in the pursuit of practice. This is a moment he has earned and can revel in forever.
이번 연도가 엄청 살면서 제일 힘들었을 수도 있을 것 같은데 이렇게 마지막에 또 보상을 받아서 정말 하느님이 장난치는 것 같기도 하고 굉장히 오묘하네요.
But for Minho, it really is just a moment. The initial ecstasy of winning was soon put to rest by a wave of criticism. He never cared about the financial success of winning, he just wanted the recognition. So when fans started to discuss the World Finals, Minho was disheartened to hear his performance was being ridiculed. In truth, Crown's victory was overshadowed by several factors. Many people only remembered the headlines that Crown had an awful summer and was in a slump, thinking this extended to Worlds. On top of this, fans felt quite bitter towards 2017 Worlds, due to the meta being boring and Samsung's playstyle was the epitome of that meta. People just weren't interested in long drawn out games with little to no flashy action and fights. But the most important factor as to why Crown faced a negative reception after winning Worlds was the fact Faker played the better tournament. People couldn't grasp that their GOAT had just carried his team to the finals and still lost. The narrative that Crown had to play a zero skill champion like Malzahar to beat Faker was widespread. Crown didn't win Worlds 2017, rather it's the Worlds that Faker lost. The final shot of Faker crying is, to this day, still one of the most staggering moments in League of Legends history. All eyes were on him. There was no room to celebrate Crown when people couldn't stop feeling bad for Faker. In an interview with Inven, a couple of months after winning the World Championship, Crown shares his thoughts on his own performance. Being completely honest here, after Worlds, I was considering the idea of retiring because I was not satisfied with my own performance. Despite winning, how do I put this? I didn't feel like I deserved it. It didn't feel like I had won with my own skills. My team had won, but I had lost. I can't describe how I felt, and to be honest, I don't know what made me think that way. It felt as if the team had won the game for me. As these thoughts continued to linger in my head, I started getting the idea to just drop everything and quit. Thankfully, Crown didn't retire, but he probably soon wished he had. The next few years of his career are mediocre and at best a poor imitation of what he once was. Going into 2018, Samsung Galaxy are bought by KSV Esports, which would eventually rebrand to Gen G Esports. The team and coaching staff were kept on going into spring 2018, and you'd think the current world champions would find further success, but in reality, this group of 5 players were exhausted and well past their prime playing together. They bomb out of spring early after barely making it to playoffs. At some point in spring, Crown visited his heroes livestream and asks Jae-dong if he found meaning in life after winning the championship. Crown was desperate for his feelings of despair and depression to be acknowledged, and Jae-dong could only offer his own sentiments. He says, "It's an endless struggle and you need to get used to finding happiness in small things." Crown had built up this idea of winning the world championship into this fantastical life goal. Something that if he accomplished, he would instantly be rewarded with happiness. But after winning, he didn't find anything of the sort. Instead, he no longer had a purpose. He was without a dream, and that left him feeling lost and depressed. This greatly affected his gameplay, and he was replaced in summer by Fly, where Genji barely made it into the regional qualifiers for Worlds 2018. To his credit, Crown bounces back and joins the starting roster again, and for a third year in a row, they make it to Worlds, beating out some really strong teams. It's genuinely a miracle, and for Crown that's where the dream ends. They are utterly defeated at Worlds, dropping out in the group stage. This is the worst performance a Korean team has ever had. After this poor performance, Crown went to North America's LCS and played for 16 months on various teams. His time in North America was brief and unremarkable, but whilst there, he reunited with Core JJ. For a video series produced by Riot Games, they discussed Crown's struggles post-2017 Worlds.
꿈이 우승하고 사람들한테 인정받는 거였다. 했다. 근데 인정 못 받았다. 그래서 난 몰라. 성공이 뭔지 모르겠어. 그냥 지금 찾아가는 거?
He eventually returned to Korea, and despite receiving an offer to join Edgar's new team, Fred at Brion, Crown joined challenger team Oz Gaming, where he would retire at the end of 2020. Minho's career was short, but he burnt brighter than most ever dreamed of. At one point, he was the definitive best mid laner in the world, matching up against peak Faker. He attended 3 World Championships with the same roster, back to back to back, and in 2 of those, he made the Grand Finals. In the year he won, he swept the top 3 Korean teams. He really is a phenomenal player in the history of League of Legends, and I hope he realizes that many of us still remember him in that light. I'm sure plenty of people have been inspired by his story, just like I have. I can imagine there's been a few kids out there who dream to be like Crown as he once dreamt to be like Jaedong. Watching Minho's story in real time and subsequently reliving it through making this video has truly been a mindful experience for me. I think we can all learn something from his story. That talent is never the final hurdle when it comes to our aspirations. Sometimes, we just need a little practice.
예전으로 돌아가 예전에 산다면 우리 마음만 돌보자 새벽을 컵에 담아 날이 차오르면 두 잔을 맞대보자 너와 내가 결국엔 우리가 버려버렸네요 한창 어린 밤 같던 우리 마음도 늙어버렸네요 It's your victory. Are you buckling that It's your victory. 잠시 기다렸던 마음은 참